as well as deferred economic growth that might have transpired if in fact Iran's economy had been fully open. So its policies have come at a very, very significant and arguably long-term cost to economic growth in Iran.
Part 4, the to-do list.
For the leaders in Iran, they might look out and see the region and the neighborhood and the greater world as threatening to their worldview.
Kirsten Fontenrose is a non-resident senior fellow with the Atlantic Council. She's also a former senior director for the Gulf on the US government's National Security Council.
This makes it really hard to negotiate with them, because when they're not looking for things like increased prosperity, increased education, access to innovation, access to global markets, food security, when they're just looking at regime survival as their greatest goals, then negotiating with them becomes a trade-off between whether you want to see this regime survive or whether you want the regime to be a problem for your own goals in the region.
Not all communication with the West is shut down. In September last year, a deal mediated by Qatar led to a prisoner swap between the US and Iran. It also saw the US release $6 billion of Iranian oil money frozen by sanctions from banks in South Korea to ones in Qatar. However, following the October Hamas attacks, the US and Qatar agreed that Iran won't be able to access that cash over concerns about where it might end up. Iran's supreme leader is appointed for life. He's now 84 years old and there's no obvious successor. Kirsten Fontenrose says work is underway to minimise risks for the next leadership transition, whenever that is, and Iran's recent cross-border airstrikes helps with that.
But the message they're sending to their people is the regime is strong and the regime has your back. We're getting rid of these groups that are a threat to our country. And then they're also sending messages to their people that they are the leaders who should be relied upon to take Iran forward into its next epoch. But they really have a ways to go to convincing the population to line up behind their policies or behind their worldview. And they're doing whatever they can right now to minimize the threats from outside while they focus internally.
There's also the view that attention on Israel and Gaza eases scrutiny on Tehran.
So while the world is distracted, their list includes things like domestic crackdowns and threats to opposition abroad. And it includes retaking an oil tanker in the Gulf of Oman on January 11th that was seized by the U.S. for sanctions violations last year. And their to-do list also includes things like launching missiles into 3 neighboring countries. And we should expect this type of activity to continue. But note that none of this is aimed at the U.S. or Israel. None of this to-do list is aimed either at governments or at their stated enemies, the U.S. and Israel. Iran is not signaling that it is looking for a war between nations.
How might Iran want the war to end?
Iran would love to see the Israel-Gaza conflict play out with the destruction of Israel, erasing it entirely off the map. In fact, this is one of Iran's 3 stated objectives in terms of foreign policy. I believe they understand that this is not practical and not entirely achievable, so they will settle for watching Israel become an unpalatable partner for both their Arab neighbors and for others around the world. And if this conflict can end with them feeling like their investment in Hamas over the past decades has paid off in terms of reducing the influence of the US and Israel in the region, then they will feel like it is a success.
So what does Iran want? The leadership in Tehran wants to do all it can to protect the regime and its future from threats. It wants to be the biggest player in the Middle East, strengthening its hand through relations with Russia and China. All this whilst avoiding direct confrontation with its stated enemies, the US and Israel. As we've heard, they'll leave that to the axis of resistance. This edition of The Inquiry was presented by me, Charmaine Cozier. The producer is Philip Ravel, researcher Matt Tolson, editor Tara McDermott, and technical producer Nikki Edwards.
That was the BBC's The Inquiry. I'm Jeff Goods, here on CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. Thanks for joining us on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, or on that CBC Listen app. Wow, it is continuing to be mild. Today is the mildest day of the week, in fact. We're going to head to a high, probably right around 5 degrees is what we'll end up with. Now, I should mention there is a snowfall warning for Thompson, Brochet, Dooley Lake, Gillam, Shamattawa, and Churchill. So a band of heavy snowfall continues to fall over portions of northern Manitoba throughout this morning up north. 6 degrees, in fact, is our daytime high today here in Winnipeg. And as I mentioned, very mild. Let's say good morning to everyone. Travis Peterson back behind the controls of CBC Manitoba's YouTube page. Hi, Trav. Good morning to Corey Funk, who will cover the commute and also directs the program. And good morning to Abby Adeyemi behind our controls this morning. And Abby, of course, covers weather on the air. Heather Wells also on the air with our news headlines next. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Well, the arrest this week of a 42-year-old man in connection with a 17-year-old murder has some relatives of missing and murdered Indigenous women say they are feeling a sense of hope. Police used the latest DNA technology to arrest Kevin Charles Q in BC this week. We're going to hear from Amara Leclerc, a family support coordinator with the Métis organization Infinity Women's Secretariat. She says while solving murder cases might offer families closure, they're still going to be left with grief. So we'll hear more on that. And it may not officially be spring yet in Winnipeg. It sure feels like it. It is definitely pothole season. We're going to hear from an expert on the freeze-thaw cycle and what it does to our streets. That's coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, as we've been mentioning all this week, CBC, a proud sponsor of the Ironman curling bond spill, and we still are, but it's going to be happening later than this weekend. They have made a decision overnight to postpone the event, so we're going to start the show right after 6 with hearing a little bit more about that and what you need to know if you have a team in that event or you're planning on coming down, so stay tuned. In addition to the first hour of the show, how do you teach trust to students of systems or teachers or each other, the concept of trust in this world? So we're going to have an interesting conversation about that.
On Cue with Tom Power.
When you've worked with some of the world's greatest artists like Herbie Hancock, Kendrick Lamar, and Snoop Dogg, you're going to end up with a few incredible stories. Acclaimed producer and musician Terrace Martin will be here to tell you about his incredible journey in music.
And when I heard that bass line, I said, what is this?
That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. In Nova Scotia, the family of Lionel Desmond is waiting for the final report from a fatality inquiry. It will be released today. It's been 7 years since the former Canadian soldier shot and killed 3 members of his family, then killed himself. Desmond had been diagnosed with PTSD after returning from Afghanistan. As Kayla Hounsell reports, his family says he struggled to get help.
I know a lot of the family members and community members. So,
lawyer Adam Rogers says for him, the Lionel Desmond case is personal. But he says all of Canada should be watching today's results from the fatality inquiry.
It was a provincial inquiry, but the issues really touch, families across the country. Anybody that's involved with the military families, the issue of what happens when a soldier comes home from combat.
Desmond was diagnosed with severe PTSD after 2 tours in Afghanistan. He was medically released from the Canadian Armed Forces in 2015. A year and a half later, he bought a semi-automatic rifle. He walked into his family's home in Upper Big Tracadie, Nova Scotia, and killed his mother, wife, and 10-year-old daughter before killing himself. His twin sisters fought for an inquiry. Public hearings began in 2020. Cassandra Desmond previously testified her brother tried to get help and couldn't. She read her brother's own words.
There's no support in place. I feel like you're thrown to the wolves and the rest is for the seagulls.
Her lawyer says the inquiry has been unnecessarily delayed, but he's hopeful the recommendations released today will prevent such a tragedy from happening again. Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, Port Hawkesbury, Nova Scotia.
Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan and his wife have been sentenced to 14 years in prison for corruption. A special court made the ruling this morning. Khan and his wife were convicted of retaining and selling state gifts when he was in power. This all comes one day after another special court convicted him of leaking state secrets. It sentenced him to 10 years in prison. Those sentences will be served concurrently. Khan will be banned from running for office for the next 10 years. In the United States, a rare move by the House of Representatives. It's going ahead with a vote to try to impeach Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. The CBC's Richard Madden is on the story for us from Washington. Richard, what are the accusations against him?
Yeah, House Republicans have drawn up 2 articles of impeachment against Secretary Mayorkas, whose job it is to oversee and enforce border security. Now, the first article is willful and systemic refusal to comply with a law, and the second, breach of the public trust. Now, this all stems from the ongoing crisis along the U.S. southern border, where a surge of migrants are entering at record levels. Government records show more than 250,000 migrants entered illegally just in the last month. Republicans are making immigration a key campaign issue in November's election, so they're amping up their attacks against the administration. Congressman Tom Emmer is leading the charge.
Joe Biden has turned every community into a border community with his failed policies.
Now, Democrats call this a political stunt with the fingerprints of former President Donald Trump. They say the impeachment articles don't meet the Constitution's standards of high crimes and misdemeanors. Here's House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries.
The House Republicans have clearly turned their ever-shrinking majority over to the extremists. And this sham impeachment of Secretary Mayorkas is just another sad example.
So if this historic vote passes, Mayorkas would be the first cabinet member to be impeached in 150 years. But that's a big if.
What is likely to come out of all this?
Yeah, Republicans hold a slim 2-seat majority in the House, and there are grumblings not all Republicans are on board. So even if it does pass, an impeachment trial would face similar headwinds in the Senate, where Democrats hold a slim majority there. So this is another glaring sign of a hyper-partisan, divided government, ratcheting things up in this election year.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
The CBC's Richard Madden reporting from Washington. The future of Donald Trump's business empire is at stake today. A judge in New York is getting ready to rule in the Trump civil fraud trial. The former president is accused of doctoring financial statements for years in order to secure loans. Trump could face over $370 million in potential penalties, and also the possibility that he will be banned from doing business in the state of New York. CBC News has confirmed 4 current NHL players are facing charges in London, Ontario. They relate to a sexual assault alleged to have happened at a Hockey Canada event. In all, 5 players from the 2018 World Junior Hockey team have been charged. The complainant is a young woman. She says she was sexually assaulted in a hotel after a fundraising gala. Karen Pauls has more.
It was a proud moment when Canada won the 2018 World Junior Championships. But since then, revelations of a $3.5 million out-of-court settlement by Hockey Canada after a young woman alleged she was sexually assaulted by 8 members of that team. And now, lawyers for Michael McLeod and Cal Foote of the New Jersey Devils, Dylan Dubé of the Calgary Flames, and Carter Hart of the Philadelphia Flyers have confirmed the charges. They come 2 days after former World Juniors teammate Alex Formanton surrendered to London police and was charged. All of them maintain their innocence and say they plan to plead not guilty.
Given what I know of the London court system, that the first appearance will be 6 to 8 weeks down the road.
Nick Cake is a criminal lawyer who used to work as an Ontario Crown prosecutor. He doesn't represent any of the players.
What I'm interested to see is whether they will be charged jointly with the same alleged crime or whether they're all charged individually. It may make for 5 separate trials, or it may make for one longer, somewhat more complicated trial.
Robert Talak represented the young woman during the initial police investigation and the civil case. He's no longer representing her, but hopes she gets the accountability and repercussion she was seeking.
There's a bit of a National Enquirer element to this because it is hockey and celebrity. So I think that's an added layer of frustration and distress.
London police will provide an update on the case on Monday. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
We've told you stories of stolen vehicles before, taken from driveways across the country and ending up in a shipping container or halfway across the world. This next one is unique. A Toronto man knew where to find his stolen truck. That was the easy part. As Angelina King tells us, getting authorities to do something about it was another story.
Press 1. Last week, Michael Walker was incessantly calling and emailing government officials and police, trying to get his stolen truck back. He knew where it was. That's because he had a tracker installed in his vehicle. The company that makes it, Tag Tracking, pinpointed its location to a shipping container in a secure rail yard in Vaughan. But for more than 2 weeks, police nor the Canada Border Services Agency would retrieve the truck.
I'm not very happy that someone can't get off their hiney and open the container that it's supposed to be in.
But 17 days later, the CBSA did open it. But Walker believes that only happened because of his persistence and inquiries from the CBC.
So I'm feeling pretty good today.
Even before the truck made it to the rail yard, the tracking company first found it in a parking lot in Mississauga. Police were notified, but after 5 hours, the truck was stolen again and moved to the shipping container.
Nationally, it's a crisis.
Amanda Dean with the Insurance Bureau of Canada says that's why some insurance companies are pushing drivers to install trackers. But Walker says more funding is needed for those who recover the vehicles.
You can track them all over the place, but if you don't have the police presence to reel them in, you're wasting money.
Peel Police says they usually respond to located stolen vehicles in time. As for why the CBSA took so long to open the container, the agency wouldn't say. Angelina King, CBC News, Toronto.
Angelina has more on this story at cbcnews.ca. It is the most read story on our main page. If you're on TikTok, you have definitely heard a lot of this song lately.
It's a murder on the dance floor, but you better not kill the groove. Hey, it's murder on the dance floor.
Enjoy it while you can. Universal Music owns this track by Sophie Ellis-Bextor, and as well as other songs by Taylor Swift, Weeknd, and Drake, and it says it is pulling all of its music off TikTok. The Chinese social media company and Universal were in talks over payments for the songs, but it appears those talks have broken down and Universal is walking away.
If you think you're getting away, I will prove you wrong. I'll take you all the way. Stay another song.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
It's murder on the dance floor, but you better not kill the groove. Hey, it's murder on the dance. Hey, it's murder on the dance floor, but you better not steal the moves, DJ.
Good morning, Manitoba. Well, I'm up now. It is 4 degrees in Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at Information Radio. This is your CBC Morning Show on 89.3. You also might be checking us out on the main network or on YouTube or on that CBC Listen app. However you're joining us, thank you. Well, wow, we've got a mild day, mildest of the whole week. Right now it is 4 degrees in the city of Winnipeg. More in the forecast and a sunny day ahead as well. These spring-like conditions have forced, however, the Ironman Outdoor Curling Bonspiel to postpone. So it's still going to happen. We're going to get an update. That is first out the gate here in a couple of minutes. In addition, this hour, we're going to talk about teaching trust. There's a new series of lesson plans aimed at helping Canadian students to learn critical thinking skills, but also to figure out who and what to believe. And medical assistance in dying will not yet include people struggling with mental illness in Canada. Our mental health columnist fully supports the delay. And we're going to hear why when we get his perspective. He is on instead of Dr. Bardwaj for our medical column this morning, and that's coming up just before 7. Right now, 6:11, Heather Wells is in with headlines.
Good morning. The man accused in the 2007 murder of 24-year-old Crystal Saunders has a history of sexual assault in BC. In 2015, Kevin Charles Q was sentenced to 5 years for attacks on 2 BC women. We're going to hear more about that. He was arrested in Vancouver this week in connection with the murder in 2007 of Crystal Saunders. A recent attack at Edmonton City Hall has officials in Winnipeg rethinking safety. Councillor Marcus Chambers suggests putting metal detectors in at City Hall. Mayor Scott Gillingham says he's not opposed, but wants first to hear from the city's security lead. That's a position city officials are still filling. We'll hear more in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Abby Adeyemi. Wow.
Wow. You just took it off me. You just took it out
Sorry.
of my mouth. Like, I was going to say, wow.
It's the only word for today.
Yep, because it's going to be mild. Currently, we are at 4 degrees in the downtown. We're expecting a high of 6 with lots of sunshine today. That sunshine we were looking for yesterday, and I predicted sunshade weather. I guess today is that day. You need your sunglasses for protection, and you will need one handy today. Also in the forecast, there is a snowfall warning for several regions in northern Manitoba, and the affected areas include Thompson, Nelson House, Split Lake, To-Do Lake, Gillam, Shimanoa, and Churchill. Now, this band of localized heavy snow is currently on the way, according to the radar. It's currently on the way to that part of the region, and the main axis of the snowfall will move through the south eastwards part of the region towards Gillam, and most of the snow is expected to fall south of To-Do Lake and Churchill, and of course northeast of Thompson. Expect about 10 centimeters of snow this morning along this path as the snow tapers off from the west to the east through the day. For residents there, I would just advise you to be prepared, because it might just change. You might think it's not going to come your way, but then you might be in transit and it's going to blow your way. So I'll just advise you to take care out there. But Winnipeg right now is currently at 4 degrees.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Yeah, as Abby's saying, this will move through the day, so it's going to develop 10 centimeters. I guess it depends how mild it stays up there in terms of how bad things get. We'll have to keep an eye on that. The commute this morning, Corey Funk is in. Hi there.
I wore shorts today on my run to work.
I was going to say, so this is the best. Corey changes his pants every morning.
That's a funny way to say it.
Then you can always tell something about the commute depending on what your pants look like when you come in.
Yes.
So today it was just shorts. How was it out there?
Today my shins were a little bit dirty from from some of the slush out there. It is really starting to get a little slushy, a little slippery as well. Pretty much your only two choices out there, slushy or slippery on those sidewalks. Other than that, though, the roads seem to be okay so far. Haven't heard anything on the commuter line. Let me know what you're seeing there, or the bike lanes. Anything else? Would love to hear what you're seeing. Give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
Well, it is easy to celebrate when the weather is warm this last day of January, but of course, there's also a number of concerns. Farmers need moisture, and our outdoor winter events are in trouble. Some of them not in trouble for the long haul, just having to postpone them. Normally, we are at a time of year where it's a safe bet for anyone planning something outside, like a curling tournament in Winnipeg at Bonspiel. But of course, we've defied the odds. So as many as 64 teams were set to compete in the Ironman curling tournament on the Red River this weekend. And CBC is one of the sponsors of the Ironman curling Bonspiel. They have decided overnight that they're going to postpone the event. So Lynn Roy is up early with us with Ironman curling and here to talk more about it. Hi there, Lynn.
Good morning, Marcy.
Oh, tough decision, I bet, right?
It really was. It really, really was. We were really looking forward to having our event this weekend and, working hard to get everything set up and ready, and the ice was ready and everything was ready to go. But Mother Nature just decided that it just wasn't the time.
Yeah, she's on vacay.
Yes.
So we heard yesterday actually about the curling sheet being done, down in the river already. We're making the different sheets for the rinks for the tournament.
Yep.
Obviously, all of that is probably going to melt away. What ultimately helped you make the decision to postpone it and not, say, move indoors?
Well, the authentic event is outdoor curling. And so we really wanted to keep the authenticity of the event intact. And so looking at the forecast in the future, we saw that there was, sub-zero freezing temperatures, which would possibly allow us to be back on the ice. So we'll be working on that, but we'll look at different options in case it happens again.
So right now, what is the plan? When is the Bonspiel going to be held?
So we've rescheduled the Bonspiel to be between on February 16th to 18th. So same location, same place. We're going to reutilize the ice. We'll have to repaint. But we are set to go for February 15th or 16th to 18th.
So that's leading into the Louis Riel long weekend there.
That's right. Yeah. Unfortunately, that was the only weekend that we could make work. And then with the weather, also, we needed to keep that in mind.
So I know I'm going to be helping out just to sort of kick off the event. It was to be this Friday night. Now it'll be Friday, February 16th. What do the teams need to know this morning, Lynn? The 64 teams that were set to compete.
So the teams that are currently registered, we are going to reach out to them and see if they're still available to curl on the weekend of the 16th. If they're unable to curl, we'll give them a couple different options on how to either recoup their registration fees. We can roll them over into next year, or we can donate their registration to charity because the event is a charity event. So there's a couple options for them.
You said that, your hope is that we're going to be cold enough on that February 16th weekend to make this a go down on the ice. But if not, what kind of backup options, do you even have to explore?
Well, we're going to look at hopefully maybe a curling club that can accommodate us for a couple-day tournament. We don't have to be at a same curling club. It could be a curling club one day, a curling club the next day. So our team is reaching out to our contacts right now in terms of to see what's available.
You said teams that are already registered, the 64 teams. Are you going to reopen registrations now, or is this just a straight postponement?
No, we are opening registration again. I believe it is open now. We reopened it last night. So $200 for the team. We're encouraging more registration. We can take up to 80 teams. So it's probably a good opportunity for us to kind of get to that maximum.
Where can people go if they want more information or to register?
IronmanCurling.com is the website to go to. And all our information is there.
And remind us, Lynn, of the charitable aspect of this and what you raise money for.
So we're raising money for the Heart and Stroke Foundation as well as Hope Worldwide Canada. So we've been raising money for Heart and Stroke for the last 23 years.
Why have you been involved with it? What do you enjoy the most about the event?
I have a very rich background in curling. I started when I was 5. So, and curling in leagues and curling in bonspiels, and I just have a heart for it. And then the Heart and Stroke Foundation, my father having a heart attack just kind of brings it all full circle for me. So
I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Was that recent or years ago?
It was about a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
He's well. He's okay now.
Oh, good. That was my next question, to find out how he's faring now, a year and a half later.
Yeah, no, he's well. He's active. He's walking every day. So we want to encourage as well. Even though we've some folks actually do join us have had a heart attack as well, and they're encouraged to exercise. Right?
There's a lot of misconceptions about having a heart attack. I think a lot of people think that it happens. We understand what this is and how to prevent it and such. But there's still a lot of information that has to come out. Is that also part of the charity? Making sure people talk about this and are aware of their risks and things like that?
Yeah, that's why we involve the Heart and Stroke Foundation. So they're with us for the entire weekend, and we share information, whether that's on our social media or in person or through their channels. We just share information so we can educate people.
Anything else people need to know this morning about your plans and switching gears to have the Bonspiel on a different weekend?
Just that we're excited to welcome everyone to curl, and hopefully we're going to be able to do it on the ice. We're confident that we're going to be able to pull something off, and we're excited to see everyone.
I should ask, I said final question, but I should ask one more. If someone's listening now that you've opened up registration again and they've never curled and they're nervous and they think, oh, I can't put a team in, what would you say to those folks?
Well, it's probably the best tournament to play in terms of there's no competition. So even if you don't know how to curl, there's people there who can teach you. You can join as an individual, or you can join as a team with other people, other family members or other friends. But it is the best tournament in terms of there's no skill necessary. The ice, playing ice on outdoor rink is very different than indoor ice. So it's a challenging game, but not in a competition type of atmosphere.
I think that's going to speak to a lot of people. There's no skill necessary.
That's right.
Just come and have fun. It can be intimidating, but it's such a fun sport. Lynn, thank you very much. I know it's disappointing in the moment, but great that you found another weekend, and I'm sure it'll go off without a hitch. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
That is at Lynn Roy with Ironman Curling, as the outdoor tournament, the Bonspiel on the Red River down by Lyndale Drive, has been postponed. It will be held February 16th to 18th. CBC is one of the sponsors. I'll be there on Friday night, February 16th. And if you are one of the teams, you want more information about, as Lynn said, either getting a refund or postponing your entry fee or donating it to charity, whatever you want to do. If you can't make that new weekend, you can reach out to them. And if you are someone interested in registering, they can take more teams. So it's the 16th to 18th, super fun. Hopefully the weather will get colder. We don't say that all that often, but that's what they're needing because the ice is just not in good shape. IronmanCurling.com is where you can go for more information. Now, we want to entice you with one more thing before we move on from curling. Look at Corey Funk.
Dun, dun, dun. I'm currently wearing a CBC very modern t-shirt with the cool fancy branding. I've got a toque on with the fancy branding. I got a tote bag with the fancy branding and a really snazzy looking mug with the fancy branding.
Now, we're glad you look lovely, but why?
Oh, well, these are the prizes for our Hurry Hard competition.
Yeah, so we're switching gears as well. Just like the Bonspiel switch gears.
Yes.
We're switching gears with our contest.
Yes, we want you to call us with your best Hurry Hard.
Okay, you know who's really good at it?
Who?
Abby. So later in the show, Abby will demonstrate his Hurry Hard skills vocally.
Yeah.
And that's what we want you to do. It's that simple.
Just give us a good Hurry Hard. That's my Newfoundland. You get all the hard R's.
Oh, I like that.
Thank you. Hurry Hard.
I like that.
Yes.
The way to enter, we have 3 of these warm-up winter prize pack from CBC. Thank you, Corey. We have 3 of them up for grabs, is to simply call and give us your Hurry Hard or a sweep for bonus points, right? If you've got a couple people in the house, maybe you'll make your own soundtrack, layering the voices. 788-3205, 788-3205 to enter. .25 a.m., 4 degrees in Winnipeg. And next on the program, it can be hard to earn and easy to lose. Trust. In today's society, with reams of online disinformation and some public figures who are less than truthful, frankly lying, trust can be in short supply. With that in mind, a group of social studies educators, along with the communications firm Proof Strategies, have come up with lesson plans that aim to teach trust to students in elementary, middle, and high school. Wendy Driscoll is with us, one of the people who worked on the project. She is a teacher. She's secretary of the Social Studies Educators Network of Canada. Good morning.
Good morning.
So I love that you guys are doing this. What level of trust, in your view, do young people have today?
Great question. So I think that the trust that young people have in the people around them, in the adults, in the institutions, has changed over the last number of years. I think that they're trusting less. They're more skeptical. I think a lot of that skepticism is very healthy, but it's also important for young people to know how to judge criteria for trustworthiness. And so all of those pieces together have made us really interested in pursuing this as a topic of discussion in the classroom.
I think you're bang on. That's just my sense of this. I'm from Gen X, so I think there were so many moments where we just blindly trusted, maybe too far the other way. However, why is it necessary, to do this now? Has it gone too far in the other direction? If blind trust was too far and, we don't trust anyone, how do you teach young people sort of how to assess for themselves now?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. I think it sort of has gone in a different direction, just in terms of, things in our economy and our society and schools and other institutions change so quickly that I think it's very difficult to establish trusting relationships with something that's just rapidly changing. And I think the other piece that you mentioned as well is just the amount of noise that comes at young people with just the voices of, people who may or may not be telling the truth, and, sort of what all that, sounds like to them. And so the way that, instead of sort of blindly trusting or writing a definition on the board, this is what trust means, really have to talk about that in conversations and build up the critical thinking skills that students need to judge for themselves. What is that relationship trustworthy? Do I expect positive intentions and behaviors out of this other person or this organization? And that's, I think, why it's really important to do that with young people instead of waiting until, they're in high school or beyond to really kind of let them do it by themselves.
Well, what are the elements that go into understanding what trust is? Especially because we're not just talking about trusting information and how to source it. You're talking about relationships. So
Right.
how do you think about defining trust in that context?
So when we think about trust, we really think about integrity and empathy and ability. So if you are thinking about another person, people that you work with, go to school with, teachers, people in your neighborhood, to what degree and what criteria can we put against things like integrity, things like empathy, and can we have this willingness to be vulnerable to the actions of other people and have that be reciprocal? And that is beyond just sort of, can I tell if this is fake news or real news? This is more, interpersonal, which is an important piece of, adolescent development. So those conversations definitely have a place in our classrooms, but they're very difficult conversations, which is why we worked hard to develop some resources that we hope teachers will find helpful.
Can you give us one example of a lesson plan you might use, say, in middle school about teaching trust?
Sure, of course. So in middle school, for example, you might start with something as simple as a trust game, like two truths and a lie, and, have students give three statements, two are true, one is not, and the other kids judge which they think is not true. But then take that conversation beyond the game. What was your criteria? What sort of checkpoints, checklist did you use when you were listening to somebody else to decide whether they were telling the truth or not? And kind of connect that to, have you trusted this person before? Does their information sound like it could be true? And then we would co-create as a class. What do we all think of trust, and kind of make our own definition, and build from there. So compare it to sort of more official trust definitions, and then look at what do we know from the research and from surveys, from the Can Trust Index, for example. How do Canadians feel about trust? They asked Canadians, can most people be trusted? And there is a big difference between what older generations and younger generations think when they answer questions like that. So bringing that information to a student level at middle school and getting them to think about, well, maybe I'm not going to think about whether I trust the federal government, because I might not have learned about that in school yet, but I might have an idea about whether I trust my teachers in my school. And so bringing those kind of conversations into a world that they're more familiar with.
I love this. I'm going to leave people with the website, Wendy. Thank you very much for being with us.
All right. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the interest.
Wendy Driscoll, Secretary of the Social Studies Educator Network of Canada. She's writer of the Lessons on Trust Coordination with the Communications for Improved Strategies. So that website, if you are looking for a lesson plan, is SSENCRESSC.ca. And because it's complicated, I'll mention it again after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:31, it is 4 degrees in Winnipeg. We're still melting, and it's only 6:30 in the morning. It is the last day of January. Definitely feeling spring in the air. Sunny today, a high of 6. Well, people gathered in Winnipeg's North End last night to remember Crystal Saunders. Many say they were stunned to hear police have arrested a suspect in the death of the 24-year-old Métis woman 17 years after she was murdered. CBC's Emily Brass has the story.
I never, ever thought this day would come. Never.
Cynthia Roulette is the grandmother of Crystal Saunders' cousin. She says she was relieved to hear police use the latest DNA technology to link a suspect to Saunders' death. 42-year-old Kevin Q is facing a charge of second-degree murder.
We always wished and hoped that Crystal was at peace, and we believed in our hearts that she was. But when we found out this guy had been caught, it was like so wonderful.
Dozens joined Saunders' relatives at a sacred fire in her honor, each person thoughtfully dropping prayer ties into the flames. The arrest was welcome news to others whose loved ones are missing and murdered, like Sue Caribou. Her niece, Tanya Nepanak, went missing in 2011.
Maybe the others that are out there will finally get caught with this new technology that they have, so there is hope.
Emily Brass, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Now, the man accused in Saunders' murder has a history of sexual assault in BC. In 2015, Kevin Charles Q was sentenced to 5 years for attacks on 2 BC women. Court documents obtained by CBC show Q admitted to aggravated sexual assault of one woman and aggravated assault of another. One of his victims says she was sexually assaulted for up to 5 hours and beaten. The other victim says she met Q on Tinder and had been choked to the point of unconsciousness. Her prosecutor telling court she overheard Q say, "There's something in me I'm frankly scared of." The 42-year-old Q was arrested in Vancouver this week. You can read more on this story on our website today. A recent attack at Edmonton City Hall has officials in Winnipeg rethinking safety. A man faces multiple charges in Edmonton after shots were fired and a Molotov cocktail was thrown inside Edmonton City Hall last week. In Winnipeg, city officials are hiring someone to lead a security team. CAO Michael Jack says he wants this team to develop a comprehensive security plan for the city of Winnipeg, including City Hall.
Historically, there has been a real desire to keep City Hall open, the building of the people, to be accessible. Wherever we land, we'll want, as best we can, we'd like all of council to be supportive and in favor of whatever we're going to do.
Councillor Marcus Chambers says he'd like to see metal detectors at City Hall. Both Jack and Mayor Scott Gillingham say they want to hear from the security lead before making a recommendation on metal detectors. It's been nearly 2 years since Russia invaded Ukraine. Most Ukrainian men are banned from leaving the country under martial law, but several thousand have tried to sneak out of the country by crossing through fields or going through checkpoints with fake documents. Moldova has seen more than 11,000 Ukrainian men arrive, and immigration officials expect that number could rise in the months ahead. CBC News has confirmed 5 members of Canada's 2018 World Junior Hockey team have been charged with sexual assault. The crime allegedly happened in London, Ontario. The complainant, a young woman who says she was sexually assaulted in a hotel after a Hockey Canada fundraising gala. You can hear more on this story as well as other national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. This week's warm weather is both a blessing and a curse for Winnipeg streets. That from University of Manitoba engineering professor Ahmed Shalabi. The expert on pavement and highway materials says the freeze-thaw cycle can make potholes worse on older roads.
The warmer temperature actually reduces the stress on those roads. But with this warm weather also comes thaw, and the water effect can be damaging.
We'll get set for even more mild weather this winter. Scott Kaler at WeatherLogic says long-range forecasts show Manitoba's current warm spell is likely to continue for about another week. Temperatures, he says, will cool down in February before warming up again later in the month.
I think that we'll continue to see a lot of mild weather for the rest of this winter. It won't be every day, but just in general, this winter and early spring as well, likely to remain warm more often than cold.
Kaler says a ridge in the jet stream has been pushing warm air into parts of the prairies, and he says a global El Nino gets the credit. You can find more news updated throughout the day on cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Time for the regional forecast now with Abby Adeyemi, looking at this very mild day, mildest one we've had, and maybe mildest one moving forward, too.
Yes, I think that's what I'm also expecting. And as you're sipping your morning coffee or tea this morning, the current temperature actually sits at 4 degrees under clear. And today we're going to be seeing mainly sunny skies. It's a crisp pattern start of the day, so just take it, okay? And as the day unfolds, we're in for a treat, okay? Gentle west blowing breeze, and the high for today is expected to reach 6 degrees. Heading to Brandon now. Brandon is currently at -2 under cloudy conditions, and Brandon is heading for a high of 4 degrees. Thompson is currently at -2 under mostly cloudy skies, and there's a snowfall warning for Thompson and some other part of the northern region. Churchill is also at -19, having ice crystals there. We'll be seeing that snowfall warning from Environment Canada, and that light snow later as it moves off. It's going to be a mix of sun and cloud later. You're looking at a high of -17. Good morning, Gimli. You are at 4 degrees this morning. It's clear up there. You're heading to a high of 7. Dauphin is currently at 3. It's clear, heading to a high of 5. Steinbach is at 1, heading to a high of 7, and Morris is currently at 0, heading to a low of -4. It's getting to a high of 10, and then later in the night it's going to drop to a low of -4. But right now, Winnipeg is currently at 4 degrees.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Well, it means on your commute this morning, if you're walking, I mean, I don't even know. Are we in? If you've got rubber boots that also work like wintry boots, like maybe that's where we're
like
at.
rubber boots with crampons or something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, it's a weird thing to dress for today. I was wearing my kind of trail running shoes in today, and they were kind of gripping, but I still
They get soaked?
Yeah, they didn't get too soaked. You know, it wasn't like crazy slushy. It was still packed with slushy bits right at the end of people's walkways
Got
off
it.
of the. Yeah, very strange. I also ran home on the river yesterday, and I totally slipped on the ice.
Are you okay?
I'm okay. I'm totally fine.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Nothing
no
to
one
see
was around
here.
to see
Nothing
it,
to
so
see
I
here.
was looking around like so embarrassed, but I was fine.
I was going to say my conditions, at least on my drive-in, were wet. I had to remind myself to be careful just in case some ice popped up. But
Yeah.
man, it's just really puddly and wet.
It's puddly, gross. You're going to want to use that window washer fluid. It's one of those things. Do I wash the car? Do I not? Yeah, overall, it seems like the commute seems to be fairly smooth so far. Haven't heard anything. The commuter line not seeing anything. So I heard yesterday bike lanes are actually looking fairly clear as well right now. Seems like most of the stuff is melted away, not too slushy. But if that's not the case wherever you are, give me a call on that CBC commuter line, 204-788-3093.
All right. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
Well, before the news, we had a great conversation about lesson plans that have been created around trust and teaching trust and what that looks like also against improving critical thinking in all students. So the 3 lesson plans, in case you're a teacher and you heard that conversation and you want to learn more about these lesson plans, you can download them. There's 3 of them as mentioned. It is www.ssenscressc.ca. It's terrible radio. It's terrible radio to remember, but it is, once again, it's SSEN Cress, so SSENCRESSC.ca. And no, I'm not doing it again. So check it out. You could probably also just Google more information from the organization involved, which is the Social Studies Educators Network of Canada. And now the website makes sense. Let's get to Phil DeMont, who's been standing by with our business report this morning. Hi, Phil.
Probably a terrific website, but don't you hate those addresses when you have to say them over the air?
They're challenging sometimes, yeah.
Really?
Let's get to business news. All of a sudden, we're seeing more companies in Canada and the U.S. laying off workers. Do you think this is a sign of the times?
Partly, but it's also partly a function of how well companies did in the past year or so. The big number this week, UPS in the U.S. says it will cut 12,000 jobs, maybe sell off assets. Package Carrier missed its quarterly revenue targets. That despite increasing its rate by an average of 6% at the beginning of the year. PayPal wants to drop 2,500 spots. It needs to, quote unquote, right size, which is a translation for we overestimated our market last year. In Canada, Enbridge just announced 650 layoffs this quarter. CBC's got 800 coming down the pipe. Rona 300, Wayfair 50, 50 in Canada, 1,600 overall. Economy's an issue. Canada now, it's debates what the estimate are, but the estimate I've seen from Bank of Montreal has GDP growth this year expected to be only 0.5%. That's a low number. Consumer spending grows by less. In the U.S., despite all its current strength, Bank of Montreal says it will grow 0.5 percentage point less this year than it did last year. Everybody waiting to see what the U.S. Federal Reserve does today on interest rates. Cuts are expected in 2024, but maybe later in the year than first thought. But also companies have had to shed jobs after a strong 2023. It sounds like a contradiction, but U.S. stock markets hit an all-time high last year. Neither Canada nor the U.S. hit an expected recession in 2023. So you basically wait until the numbers start to turn generally before you start to shed staff. So probably at the beginning of this year, as the economy slows a bit, some retrenchment would be anticipated.
Let's go to another story. A U.S. court just threw out Elon Musk's compensation package. How much was he supposed to get?
Yeah, $56 billion with a B.
Wow.
I know, it's a lot of money. Delaware judge said, hold on, and this week voided the package from Tesla. Surprising decision for some analysts because Musk's deal dates back to 2018. Back then, Tesla's board gave him 12 tranches of stock options, which would vest over time subject to certain conditions. That means essentially he would buy the stock at a discount and then sell it on the open market immediately and make his money that way. In a ruling, the judge said because Musk owned more than 20% of the stock for Tesla at the time, he effectively controlled the company and its board of directors. Essentially, he was setting his own bonus, and that's unfair to shareholders. I'm ambivalent to some degree about stock options for CEOs, but experts say they can hurt companies in two ways. They dilute the existing shareholder base. That means if you're another investor, your actual stock's worth less when he exercises the options. Also, it can give the CEO an incentive to engage in risky strategies to drive up the stock price. Musk did as expected, griping on X after the decision. Real problem, though, he has to give back the money in the stock that he's already earned and under the terms of the package. I think that means he has to sell stock and give it back to Tesla.
Largest cruise ship in the world was launched over the weekend. How big is it?
Yeah, just as a size, it's 5 times the size of the Titanic. The Icon of the Sea, that's its name, left Miami on Saturday, holds 7,600 passengers. That's more than twice the average cruise ship passenger list. 8 so-called neighborhoods, 7 pools, and it cost Royal Caribbean $2 billion to build. Scariest thing for me, a almost vertical slide where you basically jump from the top of a 5-story building. Yeah, I'm doing that soon. The gamble for Royal Caribbean is that the explosion in interest in cruising after 2021 will continue. Internationally, almost 32 million people are forecasted to have taken a boat vacation last year, more than 2019, more than just bodies on the deck. The average fare for popular destinations like the Caribbean up almost 40% last year. Big problem with the sector, though, the environment. Cruise ship can emit enough greenhouse gases as 12,000 cars. Icon of the Sea will run on liquefied natural gas instead of gas oil, reputedly a cleaner energy supply, but LNG emits high levels of methane, which can be harmful for the environment.
What's going on in the markets, Phil?
Right now, Europe is just treading water, waiting for the U.S. Federal Reserve decision. Germany down, France, UK up, all small moves. China's stock, though, hit a 5-year low today. Hong Kong and the Shanghai markets off more than 1.5%. Commodities, crude oil down 87 cents, $76.95 a barrel. And the Canadian dollar, it's down marginally, trading at 74.5 cents U.S.
All right, Phil, you take care. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcy.
That's Phil DeMonte at our CBC Business Desk with the news. Thanks for joining us this morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. You're on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube. Good morning to our team today. Heather Wells in our news department, Corey Funk, Abby Adeyemi, and Travis Peterson behind the glass. Coming up after 7 o'clock, our warm weather this winter is on pace to tie a record from the 1800s. So we're going to look at that with a look back in time. Also a story about 2 local designers who are about to fly out to New York for Fashion Week. For one of them, it's their very first time being there. The other's been there before, so we'll find out about all the excitement and what they'll be showcasing. So that's all still ahead on Information Radio. Right now, though, some music from a duo out of Toronto. It may be only the end of January, the last day, but already Gracie Ella and Paulin are looking ahead to the May long weekend. That's the time when Gemini season starts, which is also the name of their new shared single. Here it is.
Convincing Apple and Spotify to pay artists in a more
I've come to understand That belief is a powerful thing. And I've been giving all my power away. I can be tall and provide shelter like a forest. As long as you're not taking my rain. You know what they say, you are who you hang out with. And maybe I'm to blame, 'cause we're one and the same. But you seem to think that you can get to me, but you don't see the other half of me. You don't know me too well. You think you get the best of me, but you don't know me too well. You're draining all my energy, but I still got a fighter in me. Got all these ideas in your head, holding on to things I do and words I've said. You don't understand that you're making my bed, getting really hard to grow in desert sand. I don't need to look for you when things get hard. I know I got what it takes to be a star. Maybe if you would step off, then you would see. Sometimes heroes end up on their knees. Don't be surprised when you see me in the lead. You don't know me too well. You think you get the best of me. Oh, you don't know me too well. Oh, you're draining all my energy, but I still got a fighter in me. You don't know me too well. No, you
Gracie, Ella, and Paulin out of Toronto. This tune's called Gemini Season if you're looking to download it. Cool music for the last day of January.
fighter in me.
Love that. Love her voice. So check that out. It is 11 minutes to 7 o'clock on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, or on the app. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We asked you yesterday, out of this story that we heard about $5,000 being found in a duct in a West End home in Winnipeg, to tell us what you found. And we have loads of comments. So I just don't want them to sit there on Facebook hanging there, because some of them are really great stories and some of them are really quirky. So Corey is in to help me through a couple of these stories, starting with one that stood out to both of us.
We're putting the picture up on YouTube here. So this is from Renee Taylor Bezant. She says, my son bought a 1950s house in East Kildonan in 2022. We were pulling up the carpets to expose the lovely hardwood floors. And when we took off one of the floor registers, we discovered the metal used in the venting was printed to be, get this, spam cans. Just spam as far as we could see. It was so surprising. It's just these spam labels. It's quite the thing to see. 1950s frugality is their guess of why that is.
It's like there's 10 labels stitched together. Looks like wallpaper or something.
Yeah,
and
it's
they
wild.
Put it on the vent.
Yeah, totally. It looks like, it's really weird to see. So check that out. It's on our YouTube page right now. It's up. Wild.
Sarah Kelnick wrote into us. She actually used to work with us here at CBC. Years ago, she also has a photo of a bullet. A rusty bullet. Years ago when I lived in East Kildonan, demolished a small closet on our second floor, that's what they did, and found a bullet in the wall. The bullet she's shown a picture of. So I guess they dug it out. Swirly Q says a 1936 newspaper, also during a reno. Pamela Osman found a Montreal Expo 67 license plate. There might be some value to that. Pamela found it on top of one of the beams in the basement when she pulled down the old drop ceiling during renovations. And a lot of you are writing about finding money. So before we go back, Craner, you've got another one there as well. I want to share that I think the winner, if I'm correct here, because we've seen various amounts of money, $300, $5,000. But Trusha Wilson Howard wrote in and said, I was clearing clothing from my uncle's closet and I found $20,000 in his suit jacket pocket. 20 grand in his suit jacket pocket.
And I get excited at the beginning of winter when I find a $5 bill in my
I know,
pocket.
right? It's that moment. Woo!
Yeah.
One more here?
Yeah, Vicky Rimple said when we were adding insulation to our 1910 2.5-story home, in the top floor in the 70s, and they discovered a slightly damaged oil painting on linen in an ornate glit frame by a local artist, plus patent medicine bottles with high alcohol content and 3 squirrel skeletons and some old newspapers. So they brought that large painting to the Winnipeg Art Gallery where the partition was tentatively identified, and the artist may have been living in her house or using the attic as a studio for a short period of time is what they think. So they have no idea why the painting was how it got there, but yeah, really interesting.
Thank you for all the stories. If you want to read them, again, they're on my Marcy Marcusa Facebook page, which during the show acts as a show page for you to engage in. So I try to friend you as fast as I can. Check that out. It is 8 minutes now to 7 o'clock. It's 4 degrees in Winnipeg, -2 in Brandon, -9 in Thompson with light snow. And there is a snowfall warning for Thompson, Brochet, Dooley, Gillam, Shamattawa, and Churchill included as well. 10 centimeters. This could move through really swiftly today, this system. So take it easy if you're up in those areas. Well, up next on the show, our medical columnist, Dr. Bardwaj, is off this Wednesday morning, but we have a special coverage next of a developing news story in his place. Our CBC mental health columnist is here with usually analysis, but today we're going to hear his personal perspective on MAID, or medical assistance in dying, being an option for Canadians living with some mental illnesses. I spoke with Mark Hennick yesterday. He is also the author of So-Called Normal, a memoir of family, depression, and resilience, and as you'll hear, he has his own lived experience. I want to ask you to weigh in on this issue that is in the news again. Obviously, you follow this as a mental health advocate. It is the question of potentially extending access to medical assistance in dying, or MAID, to people experiencing mental illness. Now, right now, it looks like this proposed expansion is going to be delayed again. What's your reaction to that news?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I've been following this issue from the very beginning. The committee that was looking into Canada's readiness to expand MAID to people solely for a mental illness this March, they recommended to pause that expansion indefinitely as far as we can tell. And then later that same day, Minister of Health Mark Holland, he accepted that recommendation. As someone who lived with so-called treatment-resistant depression for 20 years, before I eventually learned how to recover, there's no question in my mind that this was absolutely the right recommendation, and it was the right thing to do by the minister. There are appropriate uses of MAID. Mental illnesses are not one of them. Based on the state of the system and the science, it's almost like a hostage taker telling their hostage that their death would be a mercy. That's not mercy, that's gaslighting. So let's stop making people with mental health problems hostages to a system that too often doesn't help them and sometimes makes them worse. People with mental illnesses have a right. They deserve assistance to thrive before the people who pledge to do no harm assist in their suicide.
Don't they also have a right, though, to make their choice for themselves? And that is obviously the argument on the other side of this, once the system is ready.
They absolutely do, and mental illness alone is not a reason to deny somebody that. But it's also important to remember that the desire to die is, by definition, almost a symptom of many mental illnesses. So it's actually impossible to tell the difference between suicidality and a genuine desire to end your life through MAID. And if you ever encounter a mental health professional, this is another issue, who tells you that it's certain or even likely that you'll never get better, then find a better professional. Hopefully that person gets out of the business, because it's extremely difficult, if not impossible, to ever predict irremediability. So yes, that right is there, but it's very difficult to disentangle it from the nature of the illness itself.
Now, you weighed in by saying, and you're being clear on your perspective, that you agree with the delay. What about beyond that, though?
Well, I mean, the state of the science as it is right now, if we're really interested in doing evidence-based policy here, there's no scientific consensus that it'll ever be appropriate. So, this model that I think really informed this policy is to oversimplify it, that for some people with mental illnesses, their brain is just broken, that they have a genetic disease, it's a brain disease. That's not the scientific consensus of what mental illness actually actually is. We need to consider the social determinants of health. We need to consider the fact that people who reach out for help don't get it in the same way that many people with physical illnesses do. So I think first we need to fix the care system that has disadvantaged so many people with mental illnesses. And then down the road, if we ever do find out that there is such thing as a terminal mental illness that lives in your brain, then we can cross that bridge when we come to it. But we're not there yet, either in the science or the policy.
Should it be weighed in a different way as the discussion moves forward? We're using terminal as a term that is often applied to physical illnesses, but should it not be shifted to person's determination and evaluation of how much they feel they're suffering with their mental illness?
Well, I mean, suffering is, of course, a subjective concept, but really, I think, I am hesitant to use the old slippery slope argument, but there is an element of that here, because the core issue around rights is really, do people have a right to die? And they already do. Suicide is not illegal, and nor should it be, because it's not a crime. Suicide and suicidality, the desire to die in the context of a mental illness, is a symptom. Most people who say that they would apply for something like this say it's because their life is unbearable. And their life is unbearable not necessarily because of their symptoms. It's because of the stigmatizing society that we live in that makes their life unbearable. So, I think that we need to really revisit our model of how we talk about mental illness. This isn't an equality issue, just collapsing mental health into physical health, that we still have to honor and support the very real differences that exist.
Mark Hennick is our mental health columnist. We have ongoing coverage of this morning. I'll tell you more about that after our CBC Winnipeg News headlines.
Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in the CBC News Centre. The man accused in the 2007 murder of 24-year-old Crystal Saunders has a history of sexual assault in BC. In 2015, Kevin Charles Q was sentenced to 5 years for attacks on 2 BC women. Court documents obtained by CBC show Q admitted to the aggravated sexual assault of one woman and aggravated assault of another. The 42-year-old was arrested in Vancouver this week. That arrest is giving hope to other families of murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls. It's not officially spring, but it is definitely pothole season. Unseasonably warm weather is exposing city streets to the dreaded thaw-freeze cycle that helps cause potholes. We're going to hear from an expert at the University of Manitoba in our next local news at 7:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
After 7 o'clock, what records are we breaking with these warm weather and warm days, rather? We'll find out more about how we're on pace to tie a warm weather record from the 1800s. Also, we're going to talk to 2 local designers who are about to fly out to New York for Fashion Week. And ongoing coverage of MAID, as we mentioned. In the next hour of Information Radio, we're going to look at the gaps in help for psychiatric care in this country, which is part of what prompted the feds to delay including mental illness in MAID. So stay tuned. Also, if you want to react to what our mental health columnist had to say, 788-3205.
Today on The Current.
Pediatricians say risky play is good for kids, that it helps them learn independence and find their limits. But how should parents give their children more freedom while still keeping them safe? That's coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Moldova says more than 11,000 Ukrainian men have arrived there since Russia launched its full-scale invasion. Most Ukrainian men are not allowed to leave. Under martial law, they're supposed to stay and fight, but thousands have snuck out of the country. They've been going through checkpoints with fake documents. As Briar Stewart tells us, that number could rise.
In the city of Cahul in southwest Moldova, a group of Ukrainian men arrive at a local immigration office. Their photos are taken and they're fingerprinted. It's all part of the process to claim asylum.
I come to Moldova because it's very dangerous in Ukraine.
Vitaly is in his 30s and would only give us his first name. He's originally from Odessa and says he crossed over the border into Moldova on foot.
Тяжелое, но я больше года думал.
I've been thinking about doing this for over a year, he said. I was hoping maybe the war would actually end. Instead, Ukraine's military leaders say they need as many as 500,000 new soldiers. The government is considering a mobilization bill that would make more people eligible for the draft and sanction those who evade it. Border patrols have been stepped up. Ukraine says its border guards have caught nearly 20,000 men trying to leave since the start of Russia's war by crossing through fields and forests, what authorities call the green border.
Come here.
But just over 25,000 have made it out, crossing illegally into Slovakia, Moldova, and Romania.
Every day we have more and more men.
Yuri Golban is with Moldova's Ministry of Internal Affairs.
We don't give to Ukrainian part any information about these guys because Moldova give them international protection.
But he says most of the men don't stay. For them, Moldova is just a stop on the way to the EU. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Kabul, Moldova.
Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan and his wife have been sentenced to 14 years in prison for corruption. A special court made the ruling this morning. Khan and his wife were convicted of retaining and selling state gifts when he was in power. This all comes one day after another special court convicted him of leaking state secrets. It sentenced him to 10 years in prison. Those sentences will be served concurrently. Khan will be banned from running for office for the next 10 years. In Nova Scotia, the family of Lionel Desmond is waiting for the final report from a fatality inquiry. It will be released today. It has been 7 years since the former Canadian soldier shot and killed 3 members of his family, then killed himself. Desmond had been diagnosed with PTSD after returning from Afghanistan. As Kayla Hounsell reports, his family says he struggled to get help.
I know a lot of the family members and community members, so.
Lawyer Adam Rogers says for him, the Lionel Desmond case is personal. But he says all of Canada should be watching today's results from the fatality inquiry.
It was a provincial inquiry, but the issues really touch, families across the country. Anybody that's involved with the military families, the issue of what happens when a soldier comes home from combat.
Desmond was diagnosed with severe PTSD after 2 tours in Afghanistan. He was medically released from the Canadian Armed Forces in 2015. A year and a half later, he bought a semi-automatic rifle. He walked into his family's home in Upper Big Trackety, Nova Scotia, and killed his mother, wife, and 10-year-old daughter before killing himself. His twin sisters fought for an inquiry. Public hearings began in 2020. Cassandra Desmond previously testified her brother tried to get help and couldn't. She read her brother's own words.
There's no support in place. I feel like you're thrown to the wolves and the rest is for the seagulls.
Her lawyer says the inquiry has been unnecessarily delayed, but he's hopeful the recommendations released today will prevent such a tragedy from happening again. Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, Port Hawkesbury, Nova Scotia.
CBC News has confirmed 4 current NHL players are facing charges in London, Ontario. They relate to a sexual assault alleged to have happened at a Hockey Canada event. In all, 5 players from the 2018 World Junior Hockey Team have been charged. The complainant is a young woman. She says she was sexually assaulted in a hotel after a fundraising gala. Karen Pauls has more.
It was a proud moment when Canada won the 2018 World Junior Championships. But since then, revelations of a $3.5 million out-of-court settlement by Hockey Canada after a young woman alleged she was sexually assaulted by 8 members of that team. And now, lawyers for Michael McLeod and Cal Foote of the New Jersey Devils, Dylan Dubé of the Calgary Flames, and Carter Hart of the Philadelphia Flyers have confirmed the charges. They come 2 days after former World Juniors teammate Alex Formanton surrendered to London police and was charged. All of them maintain their innocence and say they plan to plead not guilty.
Given what I know of the London court system, that the first appearance would be 6 to 8 weeks down the road.
Nick Cake is a criminal lawyer who used to work as an Ontario Crown prosecutor. He doesn't represent any of the players.
What I'm interested to see is whether they will be charged jointly with the same alleged crime or whether they're all charged individually. It may make for 5 separate trials, or it may make for one longer, somewhat more complicated trial.
Robert Talak represented the young woman during the initial police investigation and the civil case. He's no longer representing her, but hopes she gets the accountability and repercussion she was seeking.
There's a bit of a National Enquirer element to this because it is hockey and celebrity. So I think that's an added layer of frustration and distress.
London police will provide an update on the case on Monday. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
U.S. House Republicans have taken a party line vote. It is a move towards impeaching Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. A committee voted after midnight to recommend impeachment to the full House over what they call his willful and systematic refusal to enforce immigration laws. Democrats call the proceedings a sham ordered by Donald Trump. They're arguing Republicans should be working with the Biden administration to secure the Mexican border. The full House could vote on the impeachment as soon as next week. France's Interior Minister says about 10,000 people are protesting on the highways this morning. Farmers have parked their tractors at more than 100 entry points into Paris. They're demanding better prices and loosened regulations. The movement has spread to Belgium, too. A few hundred tractors have snarled traffic across that country. And the farmers say they plan to protest outside EU headquarters tomorrow. The EU leaders gather for their summit in Brussels. Around 4 million Canadians have criminal records. But a new report out today finds many businesses are reluctant to hire people with a prior conviction, no matter how minor. Mike Crawley has that story.
In a warehouse just north of Toronto, a forklift picks up a pallet of popcorn by Comeback Snacks, a company that Emily O'Brien came up with when she was in prison.
And I was like, how can I make a comeback? How can I turn this around? And as I was talking with my other fellow inmates, I realized that we all had so much potential and we all just needed another chance.
O'Brien launched her business in 2020 and since then has hired 8 people who had criminal records, giving them part-time marketing jobs.
They have been the best. They have been so reliable.
O'Brien's approach seems to be the exception, according to a new national report from the John Howard Society of Ontario. The advocacy group commissioned researchers to interview hiring managers across Canada and found many would not hire anyone with a criminal record.
They would discard that application.
Sophia Hussein is senior policy analyst for John Howard.
And it didn't matter whether the record was old, what type of offense it was, whether it was relevant to the position.
The human rights codes in British Columbia, Quebec, and Newfoundland and Labrador prohibit employers from discriminating against people whose criminal records are not related to their job. Hussein wants more provinces to follow suit. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Vaughan, Ontario.
Adele is making her return to continental Europe.
Blessed up, so you got your head in the clouds. You made a fool out of you, and boy, she's bringing you down. She made your heart melt.
On Instagram this morning, she revealed she will be performing 4 shows this summer in Munich. And we know Adele does nothing halfway, so she will be singing in a custom-built open-air stadium that can seat 80,000 people. Adele has not played continental Europe since 2016, and she says she was not planning any more shows after her Las Vegas residency and 2 shows in London. But a bespoke stadium in the middle of Europe, that was something she could not resist.
But I'm guessing that's the reason that you stayed. I heard you've been missing me. You've been telling people things you shouldn't be.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
It's a crime, I think, right? To fade out of Adele. Sorry, folks. Good morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live in mild and melting downtown Winnipeg. And you're on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube. Well, pull out the rubber boots today or something that's got grip and that can deal with puddles. It's going to be one of the mildest days we've had, in a mild week. Abby's in with the weather forecast, and then we're going to have a discussion about records. Our warm weather this winter is on pace to tie a record from the 1800s, so we're going to hear more about that. In addition, this hour on the show, 2 local designers are going to fly out to New York for Fashion Week next month. And for one of them, it's their first time. We're going to capture the excitement at 7:40. And then to serious matters at 10 to 8. Assisted dying for people in Canada. Requesting it on the basis of mental illness alone is not going to happen anytime soon. That decision coming down from the federal government. So we heard about the delay yesterday, but it puts a spotlight on something we'll explore this hour: the need for more psychiatrists, psychologists, and mental health support workers for support, but also for treatment. So we're going to hear what the national picture looks like, and then we'll talk a bit about how Manitoba fits into that. So that's coming up just before 8. Right now, 7:11, Heather Wells is in with our news headlines.
Good morning. Well, a sacred fire last night for a 24-year-old murder victim. Dozens gathered in the North End praying for Crystal Saunders. Her body was found in a ditch near St. Ambrose in 2007. This week, 42-year-old Kevin Q was charged with second-degree murder in connection to her death. The arrest is giving hope to families of murdered and missing women. A recent attack at Edmonton City Hall has officials in Winnipeg rethinking safety. Councillor Marcus Chambers suggesting putting metal detectors inside City Hall. Mayor Scott Gillingham says he's not opposed to the idea, but wants first to hear from the city's security lead, which is a position city officials are just in the process of filling. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 7:30.
Heather Wells, do you curl?
You know, I have curled. Not recently, but I have. It's so much fun.
Are you brave enough to give us your best hurry hard on the radio?
Probably not, no.
Well, you don't need to, because we have a ringer on our team. You ready? 1, 2, 3.
Hurry hard! Hurry hard!
Abby's got it down.
Hard! Hurry hard!
Sweep!
Hurry hard!
7, right? He's got it down. I don't even think the man has ever curled, but he's got the yell down.
I've been watching YouTube videos, and I think I'm ready for that. Everything, how to you go to YouTube, how to curl, I'm already there.
Okay, well, we might need to enter a team. Why are we doing all of this right now and talking about it? Because early this morning, if you were with us in the last hour, then you heard that CBC is a sponsor of the Ironman curling bonspiel. It was to happen this weekend, but we're about to talk about the mild forecast, and because of that mild forecast, they have had to postpone. So they're postponing until February 16th to the 18th. We hope you can join us out there on the ice then. And to win a prize pack, we got 3 awesome CBC prize packs. Toques you can wear down on the ice if you're part of the bonspiel, shirts, a mug, really cool t-shirt. You have to call us with your best, Abby.
Yeah, hurry hard!
There we go.
You don't have to say, just do it.
Do it on the listener line. 788-3205. 788-3205 for a chance to win. We've got 3 prize packs. Now that we have updated that information, let's update the forecast.
As you're sipping your tea or your coffee and you're practicing your hurry hard, I guess today is just one of the days you can step outside and practice that, because temperature right now is at 5 degrees under clear skies. It's a crisp start to the day. As the day unfolds, we're in for a treat. It's going to be a lovely treat, mainly sunny skies today and a gentle west blowing breeze. The high for today is expected to reach -6. As we transition into the night, the clear skies will prevail, but keep an eye out for the clouds to come in before morning, and then we will see some fog patches developing overnight with the northwest blowing winds, and of course the temperature is going to drop to -6 overnight. Also in the forecast, there's a snowfall warning for several regions in northern Manitoba this morning, and the affected areas include Thompson, Nelson House, all the way down to Churchill. And we hear that there's a band of localized heavy snow currently coming your way, and this snow is going to blow through, and you'll be seeing approximately 10 centimeters of snow anticipated along the path of this snow, and when it tapers off from the west to the east throughout the day. Right now, Winnipeg is currently at 5 degrees.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Corey, how's the commute?
You know what? This warmer weather does mean the roads are fairly smooth, minus those kind of new potholes that are probably going to be showing up with that freeze-thaw cycle. So if you see a new pothole there nipping at your tires, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. Tell me what you're seeing out there so I can let your fellow listeners know whether you're walking, biking, driving. I will let folks know. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about what records we might be breaking because of this warm winter, big topic of conversation. And according to the data, our mild weather is on pace to tie a record from the 1800s, which one researcher says may be, of course, a cause for concern. Alex Crawford is an assistant professor in the Department of Environment and Geography at the University of Manitoba. Good morning.
Good morning.
So before we talk about the concern, tell us more about this record.
Yeah, so there's two things to mention, I think. Number one, if you look at the forecast for today, which we just heard, the forecast is to get up to +6. That has never happened in Winnipeg on January 31st. That would be a record if we get all the way up to 6. The previous record was 5 back in the 1950s. So that is definitely a warm day today. I think the second thing, looking at the winter overall, and that's as a climatologist, I like to look at things in a little bit of a broader sense. And then you look at the number of days we've had that have gotten really cold. And those really cold days, the definition that I tend to use when I'm looking at things is, did we hit negative 20 degrees Celsius? So it was the low, at least negative 20.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, if you go through January, we're about halfway through our winter, we are tied for the record of having only 12 days that meet that. So if we keep going at the pace we're going, we could be tying, maybe even beating that record. It depends on what February holds.
And that record goes back to the 1800s?
Yeah, so the records in Winnipeg for good weather stations go back to 1872. They originally were at St. John's College, which is now within that University of Manitoba campus. And now the main record that I use for this stuff is over at the airport. But there's also a good station over at the Forks. And if you look at the city overall, there's been other weather stations scattered around throughout history.
Got it. How did you find out we were on pace to set the record? Did you just sort of think, we've got to be breaking something up here? You know?
Well, so I think there's two bits of context here. Number one, we know that 2023 was the warmest year for the world overall on record, and it was particularly warm in Canada, so this has been on my mind. Number two, it's an El Nino year, and El Nino years do tend to be warmer than normal in Winnipeg. So we're kind of set up to be a warmer winter. And then three, I think like a lot of people, personal experience. I usually go skiing on Christmas Eve. I couldn't this year. There wasn't enough snow. The Forks, the ice skating right there, it's closed right now because of the weather. So those sorts of things that we're seeing in our daily lives also made me think that I should just check how abnormal is this? And right now, yes, it is absolutely abnormal and possibly unprecedented when you project into the future.
I find it unsettling. I mean, obviously, we often talk on the air about the concerns moving forward around farmers and moisture and such. Mm-hmm. But from a lot of points of view, I find it unsettling because it's so not normal. What worries you about this?
I think for me right now, what I've been paying attention to a lot is the identity of Winnipeg and the culture that we have here around our winter activities and around that winter season and that winter weather. If this becomes a new normal, this definitely changes the way we interact with our environment. And I think that's something that a lot of people will be able to relate to. And I mean, look, next year, the year after are likely to be cooler than this one. This is an anomalous year. Like I said, there's that El Nino going on, and those usually only last about a year or two. But if you look 50 years from now, you think about your kids or your grandkids, for them, this will be a more normal winter. And so thinking about that long term, that's where I think the concern can come in of, well, this is emblematic of a much larger change that's happening over a long, gradual period.
We have short memories, though, as well. So I think a lot of people will say, well, yes, but didn't we just last year or the year before, and I'm mixing up myself which year it was, I think it was last year, have a great deal of snow. It may not have been all that cold and a whole chunk as well, colder than this year, but we had tons of snow. This year, I think part of, like, we don't have the snow either. So what sense should we make of that, the lack of the moisture as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I've been talking about temperature, and temperature and precipitation are sometimes linked, but they can be two different things. And some of our winters that are really cold are also snowy. Some of the ones that are really cold are actually fairly dry. So the combination of it being warm but also dry is really one of the things that makes this winter especially bad for some of the stuff I was just talking about with winter activities. And the amount of snow that we got back then was not normal. That was an exceptional amount of snow for one winter. And actually, this winter's precipitation is closer to normal.
That's super surprising to me. So can you
weird.
elaborate? Because I'm thinking, this is just anecdotal, but if we're thinking about winter norms or how we identify, I grew up in this city, and I mean, most winters, my sister and I felt like were, in the backyard with loads of snow up halfway, 3/4 up our back fence. But you're saying this is more normal in line with records.
Yeah, it's more normal. It is a bit below normal, I believe, but it is closer to normal than the whopping that we had recently. And the reason why it's tricky for us is usually in Winnipeg, when we get large snowstorms, say in early November, that snow sticks around for the whole year. So we're able to accumulate a lot of snow week after week. This year, what happened is we got a good bit of snow. It was actually October, and then it all melted away. And we got a little bit more snow, and it melted away. We got some more snow a few weeks ago, and it's starting to melt away now. So we're having a winter that's more akin to what you would see in like southern Ontario or New England even right now, where you're getting snow and then losing it, getting snow, then losing it. And so that's speaking back to how those high temperatures can have a role in how much snow you're accumulating over the course of the winter.
It's certainly a talker for obvious reasons, and as you said, a concern as well. Right now, though, we'll just, I guess, bask in the warmth. Thank you very much, Alex.
Yeah, thank you.
Alex Crawford is an assistant professor in the Department of Environment and Geography at the University of Manitoba. In Winnipeg, as mentioned, our high today will be 6 degrees. At 7:22 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. or on the app. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here. It's the show. You might be listening this morning, having your morning coffee, or you might be already out and about. If you are and there's any issue, whether you're walking or driving or taking your bike, call the commuter line, 788-3093. It's been pretty quiet so far, which means it's been a decent drive in. In a couple of minutes from now, we're going to get caught up on morning sports with Scott Regehr. But first, a little music from Winnipegger Chris Ulrich. This tune might take you back in time. It's called 1994.
Do you remember how it felt back then? Would you go back and do it all again? The way that it used to be when you were still 23. Yeah, sometimes I wish we could wake up and it's 1994 and the clothes that you made us dancing on the living room floor, and you're still there, alive in the house that you lived before. Sometimes I wish we could wake up and it's 1994. You don't have to say anything, you don't have to say anything. You don't have to say anything, you don't have to say anything. Yeah, sometimes I wish we could wake up and it's 1994 and the clothes that you made us dancing on the living room floor, and you're still there, alive in the house that you lived before. Sometimes I wish we could wake up and it's 1994. Sometimes I wish we could wake up and it's 1994. You don't have to say anything, you don't have to say anything. Sometimes I wish we could wake up and it's 1994.
Chris Ulrich, Winnipeg singer-songwriter in 1994. Scott Regehr, what were you doing in 1994?
I was living in Japan, teaching English and doing other sundry. Yeah, it was a good year, actually, for me.
I was 20 years old in 1994. And this will lead into a sports segue because I play senior women's volleyball in Tier 11. Like, we're pretty dreadful this year. Sorry, other Tier 11 teams. For us, it's a bad year for us. So it's not a reflection on the tier, but our team. But last night we were playing, and the ref was my club volleyball coach from when I was pretty much in 1994, maybe a little earlier. So it was funny. And every time I shanked a pass or something, he'd like look at me and I felt judged. Like, I'm sorry, Mr. Holmes, I got this.
Your 20-year-old self came back into, yeah, I get that.
And after the game, when we lost 3 straight to these fantastic team, but he looked at me and he said, yeah, still with the same issues, eh? No, it's the opposite. Still don't.
No, that's what I
it.
mean. Still got the same issues. Still got it. Just maybe.
Let's talk about other things in sports. We got to switch our tone though, because we're starting with what has been building. We've been hearing it in the news a little this morning. Hockey. CBC News has now confirmed 5 members of Canada's 2018 World Junior team have been charged with sexual assault.
That's right, Marcia. Those players, Michael McLeod and Cal Foote of the New Jersey Devils, Dylan Dubé of the Calgary Flames, Carter Hart of the Philadelphia Flyers, as well as former Ottawa Senator Alex Formenton. All of them maintain their innocence and say they plan to plead not guilty. The complainant in the case, a woman who says she was assaulted in a London, Ontario hotel room after a Hockey Canada fundraising gala. It was later revealed the governing body reached a $3.5 million out-of-court settlement with her. That led to a very public backlash in the country, as well as questions about a toxic hockey culture. Bailey Reid is the CEO of the Spark Group, which works to eliminate sexual violence.
Some of the backlash that we've seen to her coming forward is concerning to me. You know, I hope she's surrounded by people that are caring for her. And we know that the justice system isn't always kind to survivors of sexual violence. It can be really hard for survivors to see justice, and it can be hard for police to bring charges forward.
It's not known yet, Marcy, whether the accused players will be charged jointly or individually, which could lead to 5 separate trials and a much longer, more complicated process. But the London police say they will provide an update on the case coming up on Monday.
All right. Let's switch gears now to Olympic news. The Paris Games are less than 6 months away. There are some major adjustments, though, that are being considered to the opening ceremony. What are they?
Yeah, well, so their opening ceremony in Paris goes July 26th. I don't know if you've heard much about them, but it's going to be very different than what we've experienced before. These ceremonies will be held for the first time not in a stadium, but rather what we're going to see, Marcy, instead of watching delegations of athletes walking to a stadium behind their respective flag bearers, we're going to see them boating down the River Seine, one behind the other. Around 100,000 spectators are going to pay for a waterside view, while a further 220,000 people with free tickets are going to be situated along the Seine's upper embankments, taking this all in. And this may sound like a lot of people. It is a lot of people, but it's nowhere near the number, Marcy, the French government originally planned for. In a TV interview this morning, Interior Minister Gérald Darmanin confirmed there will be only around half of the 600,000 spectators that were intended to be part of this. Darmanin did not give a reason for the revised figures. Last month, though, French President Emmanuel Macron said the ceremony could be moved for security reasons if France is hit again in the run-up to the Games by extremist attacks. Macron cited the deadly extremist attacks of 2015 as an example of the type of crisis that could force a rethink. But as things stand, tens of thousands, I think 45,000 police officers and French soldiers are set to be deployed for the opening ceremony as it's currently planned.
And before you go this morning, some hockey and basketball news to finish off.
On the hard court, a rare win for the Raptors after losing 5 straight. They beat Chicago last night. Meanwhile,
opening night at Edmonton's Northlands Coliseum, and there's Wayne Gretzky, and what a great player, Jerry. Well, they call him the French.
Don't know if you remember that. I do. The sound of Wayne Gretzky's first appearance on Hockey Night in Canada back in 1979. Remember watching that game because I was enthralled with Gretzky. I had his rookie card. In my elementary school playground, traded 28 lesser cards to get it. And all of this I say because on our website right now, there's a story of a man in Saskatchewan who in the storeroom of his house found not a Wayne Gretzky rookie card, but a box of the 1979 OPG set which is thought to contain up to 30 Gretzky rookie cards.
Wow.
Can you imagine? It's up for auction until the end of February in case you want to, take a look into such thing.
He's hitting a beach with some coin. All right, thank you.
You bet.
Scott Regehr with Morning Sports. Your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it is 5 degrees in Winnipeg. Can you believe this is the last day of January? It's definitely spring-like. Sunny today, a high of 6. Well, people gathered in Winnipeg's North End last night to remember Crystal Saunders. Many say they were stunned to hear police have arrested a suspect in the death of 24-year-old Métis woman 17 years after she was murdered. CBC's Emily Brass has the story.
I never, ever thought this day would come. Never.
Cynthia Roulette is the grandmother of Crystal Saunders' cousin. She says she was relieved to hear police use the latest DNA technology to link a suspect to Saunders' death. 42-year-old Kevin Q is facing a charge of second-degree murder.
We always wished and hoped that Crystal was at peace, and we believed in our hearts that she was. But when we found out this guy had been caught, it was like so wonderful.
Dozens joined Saunders' relatives at a sacred fire in her honor, each person thoughtfully dropping prayer ties into the flames. The arrest was welcome news to others whose loved ones are missing and murdered, like Sue Caribou. Her niece, Tanya Nepanak, went missing in 2011.
Maybe the others that are out there will finally get caught with this new technology that they have, so there is hope.
Emily Brass, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Now, we are learning more about the man who is charged in the 2007 death of Crystal Saunders. CBC has obtained court documents showing Kevin Charles Q has a history of violence in BC and a warning. Some of these details are disturbing. Megan Ketchison reports.
8 years after the body of Crystal Saunders was found in a ditch north of St. Ambrose, Kevin Charles Q was sentenced to 5 years in prison for attacking 2 women in Vancouver. Court documents show in 2015, Q pleaded guilty to aggravated sexual assault and aggravated assault. The attacks left 2 women fearing for their lives. One of the victims says she was sexually assaulted for up to 5 hours and beaten. The other says she met Q on Tinder. She was choked to the point of unconsciousness. The prosecutor told court the victim overheard Q say, "There's something in me that frankly I'm scared of." He was sentenced to 5 years in prison for the attacks. In Manitoba court documents, he pleaded guilty to forgery and theft. Q was arrested this week in Vancouver after DNA linked him to Saunders. Megan Ketchison, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A recent attack at Edmonton City Hall has officials in Winnipeg rethinking safety. A man in Edmonton faces multiple charges after shots were fired and a Molotov cocktail thrown inside Edmonton City Hall last week. In Winnipeg, city officials are hiring someone to lead a security team. CAO Michael Jack says he wants this team to develop a comprehensive security plan for the city of Winnipeg, including City Hall.
Historically, there has been a real desire to keep City Hall open, the building of the people, to be accessible. Wherever we land, we'll want, as best we can, we'd like all of council to be supportive and in favor of whatever we're going to do.
Councillor Marcus Chambers says he would like to see metal detectors at City Hall. Both Jack and Mayor Scott Gillingham say they want to hear from the security lead before making a recommendation. CBC News has confirmed 4 current NHL players are facing charges in London, Ontario. They relate to a sexual assault alleged to have happened at a Hockey Canada event. In all, 5 players from the 2018 World Junior Hockey Team have now been charged. The complainant is a young woman. She says she was sexually assaulted in a hotel after a fundraising gala. You can hear more national and international news on World Report at 8. It may not officially be spring in Winnipeg, but it's definitely pothole season. Unseasonably warm weather is exposing city streets to the dreaded thaw-freeze cycle that helps cause potholes. Ahmed Shalabi is a professor in the engineering department at the U of M. He says warm weather is good for most city infrastructure, but not crumbling streets.
Roads that are already in a compromised condition, that already have cracks and some potholes, will tend to see more damage because of this weather. Roads that are in a better shape, maybe newer roads, they will be hopefully not seeing that much damage.
And this unusually warm weather isn't going anywhere, at least not yet. As the snow melts across the prairies, one meteorologist says it's difficult to pinpoint climate change as a factor. Scott Kaler at Weather Logic says a ridge in the jet stream has been pushing warm air into parts of the prairies, and it is tied directly to the global weather pattern El Nino.
This winter won't even be Winnipeg's warmest ever. Our warmest ever was in 1877. So while it's definitely an unusually warm winter, it's not a record at this point, and the impact of climate change is something that would need to be studied more if we wanted to attribute that in any way.
And Kaler says Manitobans can expect more mild weather this season. Now, we are expecting a very warm day, Marcy, today, but do you know that the forecast in Maple Creek, Saskatchewan today is a high of 21?
Wow.
Isn't that incredible?
Do you know what? I saw something pass through my socials yesterday talking about Maple Creek, and I thought, no, that can't be right, and I dismissed it. And then going back to look at that, it's confirmed, 21.
Yeah, it's just, and Maple Creek, of course, very close to Alberta. It's in that little bit of a dip there.
Yeah.
And Alberta, as we know, does get very warm periodically during the winter, but 21, that's summertime.
I got to say, what I found interesting in all these weather conversations is the use of the term negative instead of minus. Around temperatures. Have you ever said, just personally speaking, I've never used the term negative 20. I've always said minus 20, minus 5, right?
Yeah, right. And I'm old. So before, when we were switching to metric, it used to be below zero, and then it switched to minus, but not negative. I haven't heard that either.
I wonder if it's from out east, because I've heard colleagues that hail from Ontario, originally say negative. So I think it's a regional difference in how Canadians describe the weather.
Maybe it's the negative impact on curling on the ice.
Well played. Well played. All right. Thanks, Heather Wells.
You're welcome.
Heather's back, of course, with next headlines before the top of the clock, and news anytime at cbc.ca/Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You are listening to Information Radio on your Wednesday morning. Hopefully everything's going well in your house. Abby is here to fill in the details on our forecast.
Yes, nothing negative to say about Winnipeg this morning. We are currently 5 degrees in the downtown area. We're expecting a high of 6 today with lots of sunshine. Brandon is currently at minus 4 degrees. It's mostly cloudy out there. You're heading to a high of 4 degrees. Thompson is currently at minus 11, mostly cloudy, and there's a snowfall warning for Nelson House, Plate Lake, Churchill. They're expecting about 2 centimeters of snow this morning, and you'll be seeing temperatures drop to minus 13. Gimli is currently at 4 degrees. It's clear out there. You're heading to a high of 7. Duffin is currently at 4. It's clear, heading to a high of 5. Steinbach is at 1, heading to a high of 7. And Maurice is currently at minus 1, heading to a high of 10 degrees. Winnipeg, currently, we are at 5.
All right. Thanks very much, Abby.
You're welcome.
Let's get into what's going on the morning commute. Corey's popped back in.
Oh, it has been quiet out there on the road so far. Nothing to report in terms of any accidents or anything like that. Let's not knock on wood there. I am, with these conditions, potholes do tend to show up a bit more, so I'm curious what folks are seeing out there for that. Careful if you're hitting those sidewalks. Might be a little slippery, might be a little slushy. Let me know what you're seeing. Give me a call on that CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
All right. Thank you very much,
Thank
Corey.
you.
22 minutes now to 8 o'clock. Well, up next on the show, 2 local designers will be taking center stage at New York Fashion Week this year. It's an opportunity for media and other designers to see new talent in the fashion world. So we have 2 of them on the line. They're heading to Fashion Week next month. Adam Small is a designer who's attended New York Fashion Week before. He's part of a showcase called The Radar. Hi, Adam.
Hi, Marcy. How's it going?
Good. And Jillian Sheedy is with us as well, the founder of Jillian Lay Jewelry, and is attending Fashion Week for the very first time. She's part of the Ones to Watch Runway Showcase. Good morning, Jillian.
Hi, good morning. How are you, Marcy?
I'm well. So why don't we start with you, because you're a first-timer. How are you feeling about heading out there for the first time?
Oh, my gosh. I've got a good mix of excitement and nerves for sure. But, yeah, I'm just so thrilled to be represented on this like massive world stage, and just to represent Winnipeg and the Manitoba community. It's just really exciting.
You make some beautiful, very elegant jewelry. I just love it. Can you describe some of the pieces, your favorite pieces, to the listeners and what you're thinking about with your design?
Thank you so much. Yeah, all of our pieces are designed with like a very simplistic and minimal look in mind, because we're very much champions of, creating high quality, everyday style jewelry. We want to make it easy for you to incorporate in your daily wardrobe. So, we actually, for New York, we're actually bringing a really good mix of our pieces, a lot of our current bestsellers, but we're also revamping a few of our old favorites and bringing some new pieces as well. So it's going to be really exciting to showcase on the runway in New York.
Adam, you're heading back to New York Fashion Week. You're part of the radar. What are you going to be showcasing as part of this?
Yeah, so this is I had about 4 weeks to create 8 looks. So we scrapped together as many ideas as we could, and it's been a collection that I've been working on for several months conceptually, but yeah, it's kind of the first time we put together something this big in this short amount of time. So I'm really excited. It's kind of a push for the brand creatively. A lot of experimentation. It's kind of like one of the most avant-garde things we've done so far. And so yeah, I think with an opportunity like this, it was important for us to kind of push the boundaries creatively of what we could do, because it's such a big stage. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to showcase what we came up with.
So for the sake of the radio audience that they don't know your work, some of your work can be described, and tell me if I'm wrong, like sort of modern, grungy, dark colors, layers. I actually think it would look really good with Jillian's, gold minimal stuff, like the contrast.
Definitely,
there.
Yeah,
really
sure.
cool. Did you try to go out of the box for this collection to showcase there, or will it still be along that vein and have your signature stamp on it?
Definitely always with the signature stamp. Like, I think it's always important for us to stay true to the brand. But also I think with a stage like that and with an opportunity like that, it's important for us to show different looks within the brand, different kind of pockets of the brand that we haven't maybe shown before. And it's something that, it's an opportunity for us to show things that are different than just things we're going to sell, things that are a little bit more of a push, that the viewers can kind of see different looks,
What is Jillian in for? Just before I turn my attention back to you, Jillian, I wonder, Adam, because you've been to Fashion Week before, what would you say, given that you've been there before, in terms of either how important it is or what to expect? Because I suspect you can't predict before you're there what it's going to feel like. What was it like for you?
Yeah, it's hectic. Get ready for a lot of no sleep. But it's a lot of fun. I mean, there's so many people, there's so many different events and different things going on. It's a little bit hard to keep up, but for the week, it's definitely doable, and it's always a ton of fun. So I'm sure she's excited. I'm very excited. It's always a blast.
How did you begin designing and creating jewelry, Jillian?
You know what? I started my career in jewelry actually many years ago. I actually was working for a large jewelry company here in Winnipeg. I've always kind of dreamed of starting my own brand, and hence it kind of came about in a few years ago at the end of 2018. So I'm really excited about how far we've come, and for this really exciting adventure ahead. So yeah, it's wild.
Do you set goals for yourself? I'll ask both of you this as a last question for going there, or are you just going to kind of ride the wave to see, or do you say, I'm going to make these contacts or see these things, or what are your goals, Jillian?
I definitely think I have a few goals. I really want to meet other designers. That's like a really big thing for me. And just to, honestly, I really want to soak it all in. So I think it's a bit of both. I kind of want to enjoy the experience, but I also want to get the most out of it as well.
And Adam, what are your goals, given it's your second time and you're pushing the boundary a bit with this new collection?
You know what? Most of my energy and the goals are just focused on the collection itself. I think kind of after that, it's up to the viewers to kind of decide what they think of it. Like, I think it's tough to make goals going in. I think you kind of just have to, like Jillian said, just ride the wave and just really take it all in. Because anything can happen. I don't want to put any expectations on it, but at the same time, I know the Fashion Week is always hectic and a little crazy, and I'm really excited to see kind of what unfolds,
Make Manitoba proud. Thank you both for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Marcy.
Adam Small, local fashion designer, and Jillian Sheedy, the founder of Jillian Lay Jewelry. Both will be heading next month out to New York Fashion Week. It runs from February 9th to 14th. Well, I couldn't resist. It's a theme from Canada's fashion television with Jeannie Becker, and that show was on for a lot of years. I knew what time of day it was after school when that theme hit. Obsession. It is 7:45 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m., or on the CBC Listen app or on YouTube. Well, if you're planning on walking the catwalk today, you're going to be doing it potentially in rubber boots and some layers because the winter coat might be too much for today. Layering up is probably what you're going to want to do. We may hit a record high today of 6 degrees in Winnipeg. That's what's forecast. Different situation north. We want to mention again that snowfall warning for Thompson, Brochet, to Dooley, Gillam, Shamattawa, and Churchill. 10 centimeters of snow expected in those areas, and it's going to move through swiftly through today. Well, speaking of things that are wintry, coming up on the program after 8 o'clock this morning, a Winnipeg man may have invented a new winter pastime.
You don't see a lot of dog sled snowboarders. It might just be me.
We chase down the man who snowboards all over the city behind his, panting dog. That story is coming up right after 8 o'clock on the show. It is 7:46 a.m. on 89.3 right now, and thanks so much for joining us. The whole team here this morning. Travis Peterson behind our YouTube controls. Corey Funk's our show director and covers the commute. And Abby Adiyemi, you'll hear him on air covering weather. He's also our technical producer. If you're just tuning in this morning and you weren't with us in the last hour, then you missed the fact that this warm weather has created a bit of a challenge. But it will be overcome. We have been excited about the Ironman curling bonspiel happening on the Red River. It was supposed to happen this weekend. They have had to postpone it because of the warm weather. So now it's set to go from February 16th to 18th, and CBC a proud sponsor of that event. Now, what that has done is opened up opportunity for teams to, first of all, reach out. Ironmancurling.com is where you can go for all the info. If you're an existing team, reach out and find out more about the delay and what you do with your fee if you can't make that new weekend and things like that, or re-register. However, there's also openings for new teams to register. They can take up to 80. There's 64 registered now. So Ironmancurling.com. We have an awesome prize pack with winter and curling in mind. We, in fact, have 3 of them. So it's a hat and a shirt and a mug and all the latest CBC gear. For a chance to win, we have asked you now, because we're switching gears as well, to call the listener line with your best hurry hard at 788-3205, just like these listeners did.
Hi, my name is Tracy Howitt. I actually lost my voice in curling in the Manitoba Open a couple weekends ago, and this is my best version of Hurry Hard. Hooray! Hurry hard! Thank you.
Oh, you're going to put us all to shame. That is setting the bar. I love it. That's fantastic. I'm so glad you called, and congratulations, obviously, on your success in the sport as well. You are entered to win one of those 3 prize packs, and that is how it's done. So we're hoping for more calls. Give it a shot. We'll make a random draw of all the calls. Call in with your best hurry hard. If you'd rather yell sweep, that works too. 788-3205. And calling the listener line is the only way to enter. It is now 12 minutes to 8 o'clock on 89.3 FM, 990 AM or on the app. Well, let's turn our attention to a developing story in the news. Most provinces and territories have now signed a letter asking the federal government to put a brake on expanding eligibility for assisted dying. A parliamentary committee says the health system is not ready, and not ready specifically to expand assisted dying for people requesting it on the basis of mental illness alone. Federal Health Minister Mark Holland and Justice Minister Arif Virani announced the indefinite delay, and all of it shines a spotlight on the state of Canada's mental health resources. We've been having an ongoing look at this story. Yesterday, weighing in locally, Chris Somerville joined Faith Fundell on Up to Speed. Chris is the CEO of the Schizophrenia Society of Canada.
I know the suffering and the burden of mental illness, but those suffering from mental disorders such as depression, schizophrenia, anxiety disorders, etc., they deserve mental health and social supports and counseling rather than providing for aid. Why don't we improve the mental health system and social supports and counseling?
So that's Chris Somerville weighing in locally, supporting the delay in providing this service. You can weigh in with any perspective you have on this, but as I mentioned, it shines a spotlight on the state of Canada's mental health resources, resources that are supposed to be there to help people needing treatment. So for more on that specifically, we're joined by Carly Weeks this morning. She's Globe and Mail's health reporter. Hi there.
Good morning.
So for those who've not been following the issue, how serious a problem in Canada is the mental health situation right now, according to recent reports?
It's quite serious. And this is, of course, the backdrop being, our healthcare system overall is in crisis. So I think it's sometimes hard. We can almost become numb to some of these, dire warnings. But the fact remains, mental health services are really underfunded in Canada. There's not enough of them. People are stuck on wait lists and really with nowhere to turn but emergency rooms when they're in a crisis situation looking for help. And that's really not the best place for most people who are requiring mental health services. Our health system was really designed, for more episodic acute care, like for someone who needs treatment for a heart attack, for instance. And when it comes to some of these more complex chronic challenges, we're really, kind of failing to meet the standard.
I know here in Manitoba, we did a report in 2022, and at that time, our province had the lowest number of psychologists in Canada per capita, which was obviously also pressing on the issues. How serious is the problem among young people in particular?
Yeah, I think among young people, the problem is quite serious. And one of the reasons we've been hearing more about challenges in, the pediatric space and kids and adolescents is because there's so much at stake. When you're forcing a child to wait, beyond the recommended time, say for a surgery or for a mental health service or treatment or intervention, it can really alter, their future outcome and their trajectory of their lives. So there's a huge amount that's on the line here, which is why more people are trying to call attention to the fact that kids typically are waiting longer. They're sitting on wait lists longer, facing longer delays than adults. It's quite a stunning reality. And really the fact is, according to reports from across the country, we're seeing wait lists that range anywhere from several months to several years. And when you're talking about those kinds of delays for mental health services, it's really inadequate is sort of the understatement of the year, when we're talking about that. These are people and families that are in, dire need of help and they simply cannot get it.
Is it right that you were saying it can be months of waiting across the country? Is it right on average it's at least 3 months? That was, I think, what the Canadian Mental Health Association recently put out.
That's right. Yeah. And of course, that will vary depending on where you live. So for people who are not in a large urban center, the waits will be much longer. And then it will, again, if you're in an area where it's really underserved in terms of trained mental health professionals, you're also looking at perhaps much longer than the average wait.
What about the shortages in terms of staffing overall? What does that picture look like in Canada regarding psychologists, but also psychiatrists?
Yeah, when we're talking long wait lists, that's often one of the driving factors, whether it's for mental health services or anything else, the lack of specialists. And, this is in part, I guess, exacerbated by the pandemic, right? Anytime you had a kind of slowdown or shut down in services, it took those existing wait lists and made them even longer. And so it's really hard to ignore that reality anymore. But to your point, yes, we're really in shortage of trained psychologists, psychiatrists, others who can help treat, diagnose, assess, intervene for people who are dealing with a mental health challenge. There's simply not enough. In hospital services, while there may be a lot of outpatient services, again, those waits are long. in cases where there are private services available and people can pay out of pocket, that's really inaccessible, and even then the waits can still range quite a long time. But yeah, it's only for those who kind of maybe have really great insurance coverage or have the ability to pay those high out-of-pocket fees.
So what are experts saying are the starting points, given that the gravity of the problem is so huge, right? The enormity of this. What are medium and then long-term solutions to improve access here to mental health support for Canadians?
Yeah, I mean, of course, a lot of this will come down to funding and resources, so really allocating that money to going to where it needs to go. A lot of the challenges we have right now in healthcare do come down to a lack of sort of primary care, so sort of that front door to the healthcare system, someone who can, intervene early to help someone get on the road to better treatment. So one of the short and even long-term solutions is having more teams working in communities. So instead of relying solely on specialists or family physicians to kind of do everything, train more health professionals, mental health professionals or others, to start to see that greater number of patients. So not everything has to fall onto the physician's shoulders. You're kind of spreading the workload out in a way that can help the health workforce, but also reduce those wait lists. For kids, get more resources in schools, make sure that the funding is being spent where it needs to be so that kids aren't waiting really long times for treatment.
Thank you very much for the analysis, Carly. Appreciate it.
Of course, anytime.
Carly Weeks is the Globe and Mail's health reporter. Now, in this province, one of the things that we have reported on is the Virgo report. Do you remember the Virgo report? Came out in 2018. It talked about concerns about the ease of access and effectiveness of mental health and addiction services. It was all flagged to the province in this report. And then there were recommendations that came in the report, 125 of them. CBC News did a check on this in 2022, 2 years ago. And at that point, the province at the time and the governing party of the Conservatives at the time said they fully addressed 7 and partially addressed 62 of the recommendations. They had a 5-year plan moving forward. Now we've had a government change, and we will have to check on the Virgo report and where it is at in terms of implementing those improvements in our system. If you want to weigh in, 788-3205 with our developing story. It is 3 minutes to 8 o'clock, and speaking of developing, before I turn to Heather Wells in headlines, she actually popped in here to give me this during the interview there. We have a highway closure now. We have been telling you there's a snowfall warning, a system bringing 10 centimeters to parts of northern Manitoba. It's going to move in quickly and change conditions. So those areas with the snowfall warning, Thompson, Brochet to Dooley, Gillam, Shamattawa, and Churchill. And we now understand that Highway 6 from Thompson to Ponton is now closed. So it's closed, Highway 6 from Thompson to Ponton, and that is because of blowing snow due to poor visibility, snow drifts, etc. So that system active in the north. If you need to update the commute, very different down south where we're mild here in Winnipeg, but 788-3093 if you need to talk to Corey. So Heather Wells is back now with our headlines. Hello there.
Hello. Well, the man accused in the 2007 murder of 24-year-old Crystal Saunders has a history of sexual assault in BC. In 2015, Kevin Charles Q was sentenced to 5 years for attacks on 2 BC women. The 42-year-old was arrested in Vancouver this week, and that arrest is giving hope to other families of murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls. We'll hear more about that. And a recent attack at Edmonton City Hall has officials in Winnipeg rethinking safety here. Councillor Marcus Chambers suggesting putting metal detectors in City Hall, and Mayor Scott Gillingham says he's not opposed but wants to first hear from the city's security lead. That's a position city officials are in the process of filling. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
In the forecast, 4 degrees is where we're still at. Our high today, 6, which would break a record for Winnipeg, and it's going to be mainly sunny, so expect some more drippiness out there. Call us, as mentioned, on the commute if you have any problems, 788-3093 if you're waiting for the bus. And be careful of puddles, people. Don't splash those waiting out there this morning. It's usually a springtime reminder on this last day of January. Well, you have heard of snowboarding. You might have heard of skijoring. But what about snojoring? One Winnipeg man has started snowboarding all over the city behind his dog. He says he doesn't know of anyone else who does it. Has he created a new winter sport? We will head out and check it out after 8.
On Cue with Tom Power. When you've worked with some of the world's greatest artists like Herbie Hancock, Kendrick Lamar, and Snoop Dogg, you're going to end up with a few incredible stories. Acclaimed producer and musician Terrace Martin will be here to tell you about his incredible journey in music.
And when I heard that bass line, I said, what is this?
That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts. News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Pediatricians say risky play is good for kids, that it helps them learn independence and find their limits. But how should parents give their children more freedom while still keeping them safe? That's coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. In Nova Scotia, the family of Lionel Desmond is waiting for the final report from a fatality inquiry. It will be released today. It has been 7 years since the former Canadian soldier shot and killed 3 members of his family, then killed himself. Desmond had been diagnosed with PTSD after returning from Afghanistan. As Kayla Hounsell reports, his family says he struggled to get help.
I know a lot of the family members and community members.
Lawyer Adam Rogers says for him, the Lionel Desmond case is personal. But he says all of Canada should be watching today's results from the fatality inquiry.
It was a provincial inquiry, but the issues really touch, families across the country. Anybody that's involved with the military families, the issue of what happens when a soldier comes home from combat.
Desmond was diagnosed with severe PTSD after 2 tours in Afghanistan. He was medically released from the Canadian Armed Forces in 2015. A year and a half later, he bought a semi-automatic rifle. He walked into his family's home in Upper Big Trackety, Nova Scotia, and killed his mother, wife, and 10-year-old daughter before killing himself. His twin sisters fought for an inquiry. Public hearings began in 2020. Cassandra Desmond previously testified her brother tried to get help and couldn't. She read her brother's own words.
There's no support in place. I feel like you're thrown to the wolves and the rest is for the seagulls.
Her lawyer says the inquiry has been unnecessarily delayed, but he's hopeful the recommendations released today will prevent such a tragedy from happening again. Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, Port Hawkesbury, Nova Scotia.
The latest GDP numbers from Statistics Canada show the economy grew, but only slightly, just 0.2% in November. That follows 3 consecutive months where the real gross domestic product went virtually unchanged. Senior CBC business correspondent Peter Armstrong has more.
These numbers flesh out what we knew about the state of the economy at the end of 2023. And a 0.2% gain is nothing to write letters home about, but it is more than was expected. And all told, the data for November and now the preliminary assessment of December show the Canadian economy keeping its head above the waterline. Our retail sales figures and other indicators that come in more quickly had showed that December was probably going to see some solid growth, and the preliminary numbers from StatsCan now back that up. And if they hold, though it is a volatile time and we've seen a lot of revisions over this past year, but if they do hold, that would mean Canada eked out like a 0.3% gain in the final 3 months of 2023. But all those forces that we worried about and could drive the economy into a recession, they've not gone away and remain a very real risk heading into the rest of 2024. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan and his wife have been sentenced to 14 years in prison for corruption. A special court made the ruling this morning. Khan and his wife were convicted of retaining and selling state gifts when he was in power. This all comes one day after another special court convicted him of leaking state secrets. It sentenced him to 10 years in prison. Those sentences will be served concurrently. Khan will be banned from running for office for the next 10 years. In the United States, a rare move by the House of Representatives. It is going ahead with a vote to try to impeach Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. The CBC's Richard Madden is on this story from Washington. Richard, what are the accusations against him?
Yeah, House Republicans have drawn up 2 articles of impeachment against Secretary Mayorkas, whose job it is to oversee and enforce border security. Now, the first article is willful and systemic refusal to comply with a law, and the second, breach of the public trust. Now, this all stems from the ongoing crisis along the U.S. southern border, where a surge of migrants are entering at record levels. Government records show more than 250,000 migrants entered illegally just in the last month. Republicans are making immigration a key campaign issue in November's election, so they're amping up their attacks against the administration. Congressman Tom Emmer is leading the charge.
Joe Biden has turned every community into a border community with his failed policies.
Now, Democrats call this a political stunt with the fingerprints of former President Donald Trump. They say the impeachment articles don't meet the Constitution's standards of high crimes and misdemeanors. Here's House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries.
The House Republicans have clearly turned their ever-shrinking majority over to the extremists. And this sham impeachment of Secretary Mayorkas is just another sad example.
So if this historic vote passes, Mayorkas would be the first cabinet member to be impeached in 150 years. But that's a big if.
What is likely to come out of all this?
Yeah, Republicans hold a slim two-seat majority in the House, and there are grumblings not all Republicans are on board. So even if it does pass, an impeachment trial would face similar headwinds in the Senate, where Democrats hold a slim majority there. So this is another glaring sign of a hyper-partisan, divided government, ratcheting things up in this election year.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
The CBC's Richard Madden reporting from Washington. The future of Donald Trump's business empire is at stake today. A judge in New York is getting ready to rule in the Trump civil fraud trial. The former president is accused of doctoring financial statements for years in order to secure loans. Trump could face over $370 million in potential penalties, and also the possibility that he will be banned from doing business in the state of New York. The CEO of CBC Radio-Canada still is not ruling out executive bonuses, but Catherine Tate told a parliamentary committee late yesterday it's something she will consider. As Olivia Stefanovich reports, it's one of the options CBC is looking at in a projected $125 million shortfall.
Will you be giving bonuses to executives?
My response to that
one of many testy exchanges between Conservative MP Rachel Thomas and the head of CBC, Catherine Tate.
Will she be given a bonus in 2020?
It's not my decision.
Tate says the public broadcaster doesn't hand out bonuses, but performance pay given to 1 in 8 employees who have part of their salary held back to meet targets, including revenue growth and engagement. Tate says the ultimate decision lies with CBC's board of directors.
Would you consider, as a CEO, going back to the board of directors and saying, maybe we should consider a shift this year?
Tate says she will consider all options as the public broadcaster prepares to make 800 job cuts, 100 of which have already been made. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
We've told you stories of stolen vehicles before, but this next one is unique. A Toronto man knew where to find his stolen truck. That was the easy part. As Angelina King tells us, getting authorities to do something about it was another story.
Press 1. Last week, Michael Walker was incessantly calling and emailing government officials and police, trying to get his stolen truck back. He knew where it was. That's because he had a tracker installed in his vehicle. The company that makes it, Tag Tracking, pinpointed its location to a shipping container in a secure rail yard in Vaughan. But for more than 2 weeks, police nor the Canada Border Services Agency would retrieve the truck.
I'm not very happy that someone can't get off their hiney and open the container that it's supposed to be in.
But 17 days later, the CBSA did open it. But Walker believes that only happened because of his persistence and inquiries from the CBC.
So I'm feeling pretty good today.
Even before the truck made it to the rail yard, the tracking company first found it in a parking lot in Mississauga. Police were notified, but after 5 hours, the truck was stolen again and moved to the shipping container.
Nationally, it's a crisis.
Amanda Dean with the Insurance Bureau of Canada says that's why some insurance companies are pushing drivers to install trackers. But Walker says more funding is needed for those who recover the vehicles.
You can track them all over the place, but if you don't have the police presence to reel them in, you're wasting money.
Peel Police says they usually respond to located stolen vehicles in time. As for why the CBSA took so long to open the container, the agency wouldn't say. Angelina King, CBC News, Toronto.
If you're on TikTok, you have definitely heard a lot of this song lately.
It's a murder on the dance floor, but you better not kill the groove.
Enjoy it while you can. Universal Music owns this track by Sophie Ellis-Bextor, as well as songs by Taylor Swift, The Weeknd, Drake, and it says it is pulling all of its music off TikTok. The Chinese social media company and Universal were in talks over payments for songs, but it appears those talks have broken down and Universal is walking away.
You'll just have to pray.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
I'll take you on the way. Stay another song.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, or on that CBC Listen app, or on YouTube. Wherever you're finding us, I bet you're warm. Are you changing the thermostat temperature in the house this morning? Being affected already by what's happening outside? We could hit a record high in Winnipeg today. We'll get into the forecast in a moment. This half hour on the show, despite the fact that it's mild, it is still winter this last day of January. And we're going to hear about a Winnipegger, a man who thinks he may have invented a new winter pastime. It's called snajoring. Not skijoring, not snowboarding, but snajoring. CBC's Corey Funk recently headed out with him to find out more about the sport. Stay tuned. So we'll get into that with Corey in a moment. Right now, though, let's go to Heather Wells, who has our news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a sacred fire last night in the North End. Dozens gathered to remember and pray for 24-year-old Crystal Saunders. Her body was found in a ditch near St. Ambrose in 2007. This week, 42-year-old Kevin Q was charged with second-degree murder in connection to her death, and that arrest is giving hope to families of murdered and missing women and Indigenous women and girls. This week's warm weather is both a blessing and a curse for Winnipeg streets. An expert on pavement and highway materials says the freeze-thaw cycle can make potholes worse on older roads. We'll hear more in our next local news at 8:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Abby's here to tell us more about why we're talking potholes in January.
For sure, as we approach the late morning and the beginning of rush hour, the current temperature remains at 4 degrees with a gentle west blowing breeze. We'll see lots of sunshine later when it comes out, and we're heading for a high of 6 degrees. It's a great day out for the outdoors. And as the day winds down, we'll experience some clear skies, but that clear covering will definitely be tapering off, and later tonight we'll see some fog patches. Also in the forecast, there's a snowfall warning for several regions in northern Manitoba, all the way from Thompson down to Churchill. We're hearing that a band of localized heavy snowfall is currently on the way, and the south of Tudor Lake and Churchill and northeast of Thompson will be seeing about 10 centimeters of snow along this path, which will taper off throughout the day. Right now, Winnipeg is currently at 4 degrees at the Forks and 2 degrees at the airport.
So I have been messaged by a listener on Facebook who used to live in Tuduli Lake. So I always have said Tuduli, and she says we should be using more of an H. Tuduli Lake.
Tuduli Lake.
Tuduli Lake. Ah. So we're learning. Thank you for writing to us this morning. Appreciate that. Speaking of things north, we have an issue on the commute.
Yeah, Highway 6 from Thompson to Ponton is closed right now due to poor winter driving conditions. Hearing about, of course, those weather advisories up north. We'll keep an eye on that if it does open. But for right now, Highway 6 from Thompson to Ponton is closed. Down south here in the city, the commute's been pretty smooth so far. Haven't even heard of any new potholes yet, but I imagine they'll show up hot and heavy in the coming days. Did get a call from Alice on the commuter line, who was out on a walk this morning through St. Boniface, who says it's beautiful out there right now, but those sidewalks are real slippery. So maybe you want to wear your spiky shoes if you are planning to take advantage of this warm weather today and take a walk on those sidewalks. And wear your shorts. I wore my shorts today. Why not?
Yeah, you're showing off.
If you want to tell me what else is going on out there on the commute, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
Take that, Calgary.
Yeah, I know.
You and your Chinooks. Why don't you stick around here? Because as I alluded to, Corey, you recently quite literally ran into someone while you were out and about, maybe in your shorts, maybe not, who may have invented a new winter pastime?
Yeah. I'm actually really excited about this story because I've literally been chasing this guy down for like 3 years. I spent a lot of time running on the Assiniboine and the Seine rivers in the winter, and for the past few years, I keep seeing this guy on a snowboard being pulled by his dog. And naturally, I just kind of want to get his story because I've never seen anyone do that before. So, but he's always kind of been too far away or too fast for me to catch him because his dog is they're just cruising. But finally, a few weeks ago, I managed to chase him down on the Seine River. I was nearly out of breath. His name is Jeremy Stevens, and his dog's name is Tega. And she's this beautiful husky mix with one brown eye, one blue eye. And she's just this big, white, furry ball of energy that just pulls him around the city, and he calls what they do snajoring.
Come on, Tega. Come. Kite. I find this to be a very joyful activity. It makes me happy to be out on the frozen river in the snow, sliding along, working with an animal. I love it. Hi, my name is Jeremy Stevens. This is my dog, Tega. And we've been doing this thing, I call it snowjoring. On by, Tega. It's basically dog sledding, but on a snowboard. Good girl! We got our dog about 3.5 years ago. We got her from the pound. Oh, that good girl, that's my baby. And just the wildest dog I ever met. So much energy, so clearly the kind of dog you gotta get her exercising. Hey, Tega, you ready? Come on, Tega. Come, on by hop. I'm a snowboarder. That's what I love to do. Ready? And I quickly realized this dog was born to pull. Yeah, on by. So I started figuring out how to train a sled dog and go around with the snowboard. Good sled dog. Essentially, I'm just taking the dog out for a run. This dog is a wonderful motivator because she has to go out every day or else she starts climbing up the walls. So she gets me out the door. You want a treat? We are very finely attuned. I feel very connected to this dog. Like I can read the nuances. She likes to work hard, but only for an hour or two, and then she's tired, and then she doesn't want to pull no more, and I can see it coming. It's not a free ride. Like, dog's pulling, but I have to work too. So I am only strapped in on my front foot, so my back foot is available for pushing. So I'm basically snowboarding one-footed, which is nuanced. Well, this dog has definitely taken me places. We run on the Seine River here quite a bit, and I've always loved this river. Once we started snowjoring, we just were able to just cover ground down here. This is a way for us to meet all of our needs. It's kind of a mutually beneficial arrangement. It's beautiful. Good girl! Hike! You! There's a lot of dog sled people out there, and ski joring is definitely a thing. A lot of people go with their skis and their dogs. You don't see a lot of dog sled snowboarders. It might just be me. I think there's something inspiring about seeing a human and an animal working together. And when we're doing good, it really is a cooperative venture. And she's pulling as hard as she can, and I'm just riding along behind her. And people take note. I see the smiles. And you can always tell a dog person because they're just so happy to see a dog working hard but also loving it. Good girl! Come on, Tega. Come. Kite. I find this to be a very joyful activity. It makes me happy to be out on the frozen river in the snow, sliding along, working with an animal. I love it. Hi, my name is Jeremy Stevens. This is my dog, Tega. And we've been doing this thing, I call it snowjoring. On by, Tega. It's basically dog sledding, but on a snowboard. Good girl! We got our dog about 3.5 years ago. We got her from the pound. Oh, that good girl, that's my baby. And just the wildest dog I ever met. So much energy, so clearly clearly the kind of dog you gotta get her exercising. Hey, Tiga, you ready? Come on, Tiga. Come, on by hop. I'm a snowboarder. That's what I love to do. Ready? And I quickly realized this dog was born to pull. Yeah, on by. So I started figuring out how to train a sled dog and go around with the snowboard. Good sled dog. Essentially, I'm just taking the dog out for a run. This dog is a wonderful motivator because she has to go out every day or else she starts climbing up the walls. So she gets me out the door. You want a treat? We are very finely attuned. I feel very connected to this dog. Like I can read the nuances. She likes to work hard, but only for an hour or two, and then she's tired, and then she doesn't want to pull no more, and I can see it coming. It's not a free ride. Like, dog's pulling, but I have to work too, so I am only strapped in on my front foot, so my back foot is available for pushing. So I'm basically snowboarding one-footed, which is nuanced. Well, this dog has definitely taken me places. We run on the same river here quite a bit, and I've always loved this river. Once we started snowjoring, we just were able to just cover ground down here. This is a way for us to meet all of our needs. It's kind of a mutually beneficial arrangement. It's beautiful. Good girl! Hike, 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 hike! Ew! There's a lot of dog sled people out there, and ski joring is definitely a thing. A lot of people go with their skis and their dogs. You don't see a lot of dog sled snowboarders. It might just be me. I think there's something inspiring about seeing a human and an animal working together. And when we're doing good, it really is a cooperative venture. And she's pulling as hard as she can, and I'm just riding along behind her. And people take note. I see the smiles. And you can always tell a dog person because they're just so happy to see a dog working hard but also loving it. Good girl! Come on, Tiga. Come. Hike, hike, hike. I find this to be a very joyful activity. It makes me happy to be out on the frozen river in the snow, sliding along, working with an animal. I love it. Hi, my name is Jeremy Stevens. This is my dog, Tiga. And we've been doing this thing, I call it snowjoring. On by, Tiga. It's basically dog sledding, but on a snowboard. Good girl! We got our dog about 3.5 years ago. We got her from the pound. Oh, that good girl, there's my baby. And just the wildest dog I ever met. So much energy, so clearly the kind of dog you gotta get her exercising. Hey, Tiga, you ready? Come on, Tiga. Come, on by hop. I'm a snowboarder. That's what.
That dog, pure white, just bouncing in the snow, and he's gliding around behind on the board. It's so cool. Almost like skateboarding as he's kicking off. If you want to see the video, you can check out our YouTube stream. You can also check out our TikTok pages or watch CBC News at 6 tonight. Corey out getting the story of Jeremy Stevens snowjoring with his dog, Tiga.
Nothing can stop an Ironman from stepping onto the frozen river to curl. Except the weather. This warm spell means the Ironman Outdoor Curling Bonspiel is being rescheduled to February 16th to 18th. Join us then for the family fun spiel we've all been waiting for. The Ironman Outdoor Curling Bonspiel, now February 16th to 18th, proudly sponsored by CBC.
Got to be flexible when you're having record-breaking weather, right? And that's exactly what's going on. So the Bonspiel moved, just a little postponement, and that is because right now in Winnipeg, 4 degrees today, and today we could break a record high. If we get to 6 degrees in Winnipeg, that will break a record. It's going to be mainly sunny as well, so we're just seeing the sun underneath a light layer of cloud in downtown Winnipeg coming up here. Really gray outside in terms of the streets because most of the snow has now melted. Looking at our studio window here on Portage Avenue, no snow left on the medians, and it's just those streets that look more like springtime on this last day of January. Our high today is going to be 6 degrees. Highway 6 from Thompson to Ponton is closed. Just want to mention that, and that is because up north we have a very different situation with the weather. We have a snowfall warning, and that's for Thompson, Brochet, to Dooley, Gillam, Shamattawa, and Churchill. as well as Nelson House and Split Lake. So 10 centimeters is moving through, and that's the whole system expected 10 centimeters, but it's already moved in, and it's going to move swiftly throughout today. So if you're up there, you probably know this, but take it easy. And call the commute line if you need, 788-3093. Well, I have something to announce next. It's pretty exciting. It is coming up the week after next. The Current is going to be live in Winnipeg. So Matt Galloway is coming here to host 2 special editions of the national CBC radio show, The Current. It's on every day after our show here on CBC 89.3. So on Monday, February 12th, The Current will broadcast from here, from CBC Winnipeg. Their whole show is going to have strong, locally focused stories. And then, this is the part I really want you to listen to. You can go and see a taping of The Current live, because the evening of Tuesday, February 13th, there's a special live edition of The Current at the West End Cultural Centre. And that will include all kinds of different stories from the stage. It also, though, includes a live musical performance from William Prince and a feature interview. You are probably wondering right now how to get tickets. So you can get tickets. They are free. There's no charge to go and see the taping at the West End. But please go to the Current's website, because you do have to make a reservation. So cbc.ca/thecurrent to reserve your ticket to head out and see the live taping of The Current at the West End Cultural Centre. Now, William Prince is going to be there performing, but we want to play a bit of William Prince this morning that's got a bit of a different vibe, because a German electronic artist and producer, Roosevelt, recently released a remix of William Prince's tunes. So here's his remix of William Prince's When You Miss Someone.
lost and profound, profession to a silhouette, trees on the ground here in front of me. When you miss someone, tears you apart and then some. When you miss someone, someone you love. When you miss someone, tears you apart and then some. When you miss someone,
That's William Prince in a remix by Roosevelt of his tune When You Miss Someone. William Prince's tune, that is. Just came out January 19th if you're trying to check it out. And if you want to see William Prince performing live and in person, The Current is going to be featuring William Prince as they do their live recording of the show in February. So if you want tickets, you want to read more about it, as I mentioned, you can go to The Current's website. Tickets are free, but you have to reserve them for that show. And good luck getting a seat, because I think it's going to be a hot seat in town to get. Right now, it's time for your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it is 4 degrees already, and we keep warming up. A high today, the last day of January, our high today is 6. A sacred fire for a 24-year-old murder victim. Dozens gathered last night to pray for Crystal Saunders. Her body was found in a ditch near St. Ambrose in 2007. 42-year-old Kevin Q is charged with second-degree murder in connection to her death. Now, some relatives of missing and murdered Indigenous women say they are feeling a sense of hope after police used the latest DNA technology to make an arrest in the 17-year-old cold case. Amara Leclerc is a family support coordinator at the Métis organization Infinity Women's Secretariat. She says while solving murder cases might offer families some closure, they will still be left with grief.
We're going to feel bittersweet. I think there's going to be a lot of hope for some people and a lot of confusion for others, wondering what's going on with their cases. So I think there's a lot of questions that are going to come through. There's not much we can do right now other than just support people where they're at.
Now, we are learning more about the man charged in the 2007 death of Crystal Saunders. CBC has obtained court documents showing Kevin Charles Q has a history of violence in BC. Megan Ketchison has the story and a warning. Some of these details are disturbing.
8 years after the body of Crystal Saunders was found in a ditch north of St. Ambrose, Kevin Charles Q was sentenced to 5 years in prison for attacking 2 women in Vancouver. Court documents show in 2015, Q pleaded guilty to aggravated sexual assault and aggravated assault. The attacks left 2 women fearing for their lives. One of the victims says she was sexually assaulted for up to 5 hours and beaten. The other says she met Q on Tinder. She was choked to the point of unconsciousness. The prosecutor told court the victim overheard Q say, "There's something in me that frankly I'm scared of." He was sentenced to 5 years in prison for the attacks. In Manitoba court documents, he pleaded guilty to forgery and theft. Q was arrested this week in Vancouver after DNA linked him to Saunders. Megan Ketchison, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A recent attack at Edmonton City Hall has officials in Winnipeg rethinking safety. One councillor suggests putting metal detectors at City Hall. Mayor Scott Gillingham isn't opposed to the idea, but he says he wants to hear from the city's security lead, who officials are now in the process of hiring.
The goal ultimately is to make sure that City Hall remains accessible to all people. Unfortunately, we live in a world right now where we're seeing a rise of incidents that threaten security. That's a reality.
Last Tuesday, shots were fired and a Molotov cocktail thrown inside Edmonton City Hall. A 28-year-old man faces multiple charges. This week's warm weather is both a blessing and a curse for Winnipeg streets. That from University of Manitoba engineering professor Ahmed Shalabi. The expert on pavement and highway materials says the freeze-thaw cycle can make potholes worse for older roads.
The warmer temperature actually reduces the stress on those roads. But with this warm weather also comes thaw, and the water effect can be damaging.
Well, just get set for more warm weather this winter. Scott Kaler at Weather Logic says long-range forecasts show Manitoba's current warm spell is likely to continue for about another week. Temperatures will cool, he says, in mid-February before warming up again later in the month.
I think that we'll continue to see a lot of mild weather for the rest of this winter. It won't be every day, but just in general, this winter and early spring as well, likely to remain warm more often than cold.
Kaler says a ridge in the jet stream has been pushing warm air into parts of the prairies. He says a global El Nino gets the credit. And in Winnipeg today, the normal high, minus 11. Today's high, 6 degrees. That's 17 degrees above normal. You can find more news throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thanks for the morning, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, you heard her say it, Abby. 17 degrees above normal if we reach that 6 degrees. Incredible.
I know. I'm just staring at the charts here, and I see that sunny day ahead of us. Really fantastic. However, we're going to have, for sky watchers, it's going to be a clear night with a touch of fog. So you will have a chance if you're going to be spying on the moon today, but it will be cloudy later. And then Thursday, we're looking at another mild day for Thursday. Today we're expecting a high of 6 degrees. For folks in Brandon, you get to a high of +4. Thompson, snowfall warning with temperature falling to -13. Churchill, snowfall warning, high -17 with a risk of frostbite. It's 4 in Gimli, 0 in Steinbach, 4 in Morris, and Winnipeg is at 4.
Yeah, and thank you, Abby.
You're welcome.
We're going to see if we reach that 6. It would break a record today as well, as we've been mentioning. So tomorrow, a little different, a high of 1 degree, but we're still staying above 0 if this holds the next few days. We have a snowfall warning to the north, Thompson, Brochet, Tuduli, Gillam, Shamattawa, Churchill, 10 centimeters through today. And that leads us into Corey Funk with a commute note.
Yeah, Highway 6 from Thompson to Ponton is closed right now due to poor winter driving conditions. Look out for that. Here in the city, streets are looking good. Sidewalks, make sure to wear maybe some rubber boots with some crampons and shorts. I think that's the kind of perfect combo today if you're heading the sidewalks today. And a toque, yeah.
Just for style.
Yeah, and a short a sweater with cut-off sleeves.
Okay, now we've gone one step too far.
That's a good look.
Is it? Is it really?
I'll try it out later.
I don't know. Thank you, Corey Funk.
Thank you.
Thank you, Travis Peterson. Thank you, Abby Adeyemi, Heather Wells, Megan Ketcherson, and Joni Nicolo, our live team. Thank you to our hardworking team of producers and associate producers in our current affairs unit that work on all of our programs. Radio Noon and Up to Speed today. Make sure you tune in. And thank you to our leaders in unit, Nellie Gonzalez and Leif Larson. Today, I'm heading over to be a guest lecturer for some students who are learning all about how to communicate science on the radio. So I'm really looking forward to that. Thank you to Jean-Éric Guilla, Professor Guilla, for inviting me to be a part of this session. So I'm looking forward to that today in community. Take care, be well, everyone, and we will talk to you again tomorrow, right here on Information Radio on CBC 89.3.